Chapter 834. In the deep sea where undercurrents surged, a giant grinding stone suddenly appeared. It was over 1,000 feet wide and white, black, blue, red, and yellow swirled within. The edges of the grinding stone were a chaotic blue. The moment the grinding stone arrived, a boundless strength swept out, suppressing all of the turbulent currents and causing the surrounding area to calm down. Qin Yu stuffily coughed, his face pale. Blue veins popped up on the surface of his palms, but his fingertips remained steady, not trembling at all. After fusing with the jade egg, although his cultivation hadn't risen, Qin Yu hadn't gained anything. For instance, the 5-element mountain cultivation method that he cultivated could be perceived with just a thought, as if he had immersed himself in it for tens of millions of years and was thoroughly familiar with it. After comprehending the 5 elements, one could perceive the ultimate supernatural ability, the 5-element revolution. This was the giant grinding stone that appeared in the deep sea and suppressed the turbulent currents. This supernatural ability mainly suppressed and imprisoned. It used the power of the 5 elements as its foundation and covered all things in the world. As long as it belonged to the 5 elements, it wouldn't be able to struggle free. Of course, such a tyrannical and powerful supernatural ability wasn't without limits. Although it could suppress all things in the world, it still used Qin Yu's boundary as its foundation. If it weren't for the formidable strength gained from fusing with the jade egg, then with Qin Yu's current cultivation, it would have been impossible for him to suppress the sea god's strength. Now that he was barely able to do so, the strength within his body was like a broken dam. He absolutely wouldn't be able to last for long. "Brother White, over there, attack!" White Ape clenched his teeth. Just now he hadn't placed the sea god in his eyes at all, but now he had nearly failed miserably. Although Qin Yu called him Brother White now, that was mostly because he was forced by the situation. If he wanted to approach him and borrow his light to turn things around, he had to at least show that he had enough value. "Brother Qin, rest assured that I won't give it another chance to be insolent." White Ape clenched his teeth. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Bang! Space shattered. A black stone staff held out, falling into his palm. As if it had suddenly awakened, the surface of the black staff began to shine. Dark red lines flowed like magma, covering the surface of the black staff. Then they spread to White Ape's palm, causing him to howl in pain. The dark red vein patterns spread at an extremely fast speed. In a breath's time, they covered the entire White Ape's body. Its aura changed drastically as it panted heavily. Its eyes were scarlet red, and its entire body was filled with ruthlessness and destruction. It was as if it had turned into a demon. The strength that came from the black stone staff seemed to gather all the negative emotions in the world, wanting to destroy all things. But this strength didn't dare to approach Qin Yu, as if the fluctuations he emitted were like a god that couldn't be offended. Roar! The demonic White Ape reared its head back and roared. In the depths of its crimson eyes, it maintained the last trace of clarity. It lifted its hand and waved the black stone staff, smashing it down towards the direction Qin Yu pointed at. The seawater in front of him instantly boiled and then split into 2. Crimson black flames leaped about, burning fiercely in the deep sea, turning everything in its path into ashes. The sea god roared in pain. A long wound had been torn open on its huge body, and on the surface of its flesh, crimson black flames were raging. Not only were these flames burning his body, but they were also directly affecting his soul, speeding up the process of sea god's destruction. The raging undercurrents around him dissipated. Qin Yu dispersed the 5-element revolution, and the giant grinding stone vanished with it. He gasped for breath, a look of exhaustion on his face. But at this time, as his eyes fell on the White Ape, he couldn't help but frown. The strength of the stone staff didn't dare to approach him, but it wasn't polite at all to the White Ape. Qin Yu could see the crimson-black energy constantly invading the White Ape's body, gathering in its chest and fusing into its heart. When its heart was completely corroded, the white ape would lose all reason and become a monster controlled by the stone staff, a monster that only knew how to destroy and kill. Originally, with the white ape's strength, it should have been able to withstand the corrosion of the stone staff's strength for a considerable period of time. But its heart had already been corroded once before today. Now that the stone staff's strength invaded its body once more, the crimson-black energy entrenched in its heart erupted. The white ape's heart began to rapidly transform into a crimson-black color. Its expression became increasingly pained, and the clarity in the depths of its eyes began to rapidly fade. In fact, the reason why the white ape had fallen into such a distressed situation today was all because of this black stone staff. In a great battle in the past, the white ape had finally won and seized the treasure. In its heavily wounded state, it had been invaded by the stone staff strength, and its mind had nearly been stolen away, turning it into a puppet. Afterwards, it had been hunted down by its enemies. The white ape had narrowly escaped death and escaped here, relying on the strength of the jade annulus embryo egg to struggle at death's door. It was well aware that if it used the stone staff again, it wouldn't be able to resist its corrosion. But the white ape still chose to attack because this was its best chance. The white ape didn't hesitate to sacrifice itself to use the black stone staff to kill the sea god. Would Qin Yu just stare blankly on as its consciousness was annihilated? Rather than begging Qin Yu to attack, it might as well give him a reason to do so. Of course, this was still a gamble. It was a gamble that Qin Yu could save it. If it lost this gamble, then the white ape would truly be finished. But it still attacked. If Qin Yu obtained the mark, then the sky-piercing jade annulus would no longer exist. In other words, if it couldn't eliminate its hidden dangers, then sooner or later it would die. It might as well give it everything it had. Qin Yu's thoughts raced. A dark golden light flashed in his eyes as he looked at the surface of the stone staff. His vision blurred for a moment, and he felt as if he had fallen into a purgatory of magma. Red and black flames rose to the heavens. Black fog tumbled within, and a crimson eye appeared. It was filled with cruelty and madness as it stubbornly stared at Qin Yu. "I don't want to provoke you, so you had best not meddle in my business." Its roar echoed through the purgatory of magma. Qin Yu frowned for a moment before composing himself. "Since I appeared here, that means I've already decided to intervene. What do you want?" Bang! Magma tumbled and the red and black flames wildly rose. The black cloud roared in anger. "Don't think that just because you obtain the mark I won't attack you. With your current strength, you are nothing more than an ant to me." Qin Yu lightly said, "If you want to kill me, then feel free to do so. I want to see whether or not you have the courage to do so." The black cloud roared, "I can't kill you, but I can imprison your consciousness and make you stay here forever, never to leave again." Qin Yu remained expressionless. "Then you really are seeking death." He swept his eyes around, a dark golden light surging in the depths of his eyes. "Although I can't find your weakness right now, as long as I have enough time, it won't be difficult at all. Since you know the existence of the mark, you should also know that I am not trying to scare you. Do you think you have lived for too long to keep me here?" The black cloud fell silent. Its crimson eyes flashed with an ominous light. It was clear that Qin Yu's words had poked at its sore spot. The black cloud could indeed kill Qin Yu, but once it did so, it absolutely wouldn't be able to escape. It would likely vanish into thin air, never to be able to transcend for all eternity. To it, that was the best possible result. It certainly wouldn't choose such a fate. It didn't dare to kill, and it didn't dare to imprison. Qin Yu had clearly indicated that he wanted to interfere, leaving it helpless. The black cloud didn't dare to remain silent for too long. It clenched its jaws and said, "Just what do you want to do?" Qin Yu said, "Simple. I can let you fuse with the white ape and allow you to seize its body, but the white ape's consciousness must be preserved." "That is impossible." The black cloud roared. Qin Yu looked at it, the dark golden light in his eyes brightening. "Believe me, you will agree." The black cloud agreed. It wasn't sure whether or not Chinyu's words were true or false. Rather than perishing together, it might as well coexist. The white ape's eyes quickly brightened. It could clearly feel the changes within its body. After a moment of joy, it turned its head and said, "Brother Chin, thank you!" Indeed, it had made the right bet. The consciousness hidden within the stone staff had communicated with it just now. The white ape that had escaped from its predicament felt as if the world had opened up to it. Chin Yu's eyes flashed. "Brother White, there is no need to thank me. You and I are comrades that fought side by side today, so I will naturally help you." The white ape knew what Chin Yu meant. It laughed. "Brother Chin, rest assured that I will blow apart the sea god." Lifting the stone staff, the white ape was in high spirits. The wild aura around its body began to rise at a horrifying speed. Rumble, rumble. Red and black flames surged out, rapidly spinning around it, turning into a giant vortex. Roar! The phantom of a demonic ape appeared in the skies. Its body was 100,000 feet high, as if it supported the heavens. Its red eyes locked onto the sea god. With a wave of its arm, the stone staff in its hands came crashing down. Bang! There was a heaven-shaking explosion. The sea god's massive body was sent flying backwards. Red flames rose up, wrapping around it and wildly burning it. "I am not willing. I am not willing." The sea god roared again and again. Its pupils rapidly dilated, but even at this moment, its eyes were locked onto Chinyu, filled with hatred. "Pa!" Like a bubble, the sea god's body suddenly burst. The raging red and black flames suddenly lost their target. After a brief pause, the flames were extinguished. The sea god that was born from the endless sea in accordance with the will of the heavens and earth vanished like smoke, without a trace left in the world. "Ha ha ha!" White Ape held his staff in one hand and placed his other hand on his waist. "I have wandered the world unhindered and have never tasted defeat. So what if I am the incarnation of the will of the heavens and earth? If I say I want you to kneel, then you must kneel." The laughter suddenly stopped. Standing on White Ape's shoulder, Chin Yu's complexion instantly turned dignified. He looked up into the skies above his head. There was nothing there, but the nearly tangible pressure that covered his body was coming from there. White Ape nearly slapped himself in the face. His mouth was just too smelly. Speak of the devil, and the devil will appear. What should he do now? If he were at his peak, White Ape wouldn't be afraid. At worst, he would just shatter space and leave this world. But the injuries he had suffered these past years had shaken his foundation. Without dozens of years, it would be impossible for him to recover. If he really had to fight with the will of the heavens and earth, he would absolutely have no choice but to kneel. Chin Yu was silent for a moment. Then he suddenly said, "The essence of the sky-piercing jade annulus has been destroyed. All that is left is the strength for a single strike. At some point in time, I will completely destroy that space so that the flow of the heavens and earth's great Tao can return to the right path." The pressure from the skies slowed down a little, but it still hadn't dissipated. Chin Yu thought for a moment. He glanced at White Ape and said, "White Ape has removed the hidden dangers in his body. Once his injuries are healed, he will leave this world. Before that, I guarantee that he will not casually attack and interfere with the balance of the world." Shwa! The pressure suddenly dispersed, as if it had never appeared. Chin Yu let out a light breath. White Ape wiped a cold sweat from his forehead. "Brother Chin, it seems you have a way. If it were me, I fear I would have no choice but to brace myself and fight." Chin Yu said, "Brother White, we can't defeat him." Then he added in his heart, "At least not now." With a serious expression, he continued to say, "Brother White, you must not casually violate my promise. Otherwise, if the will of the heavens and earth descends once more, it won't give up so easily." White Ape nodded again and again. Brother Chin, don't worry. I know how serious this is. I will absolutely not stir up any trouble. Chin smiled. That's good. With a thought, the unconscious chicken overlord appeared. Before this, he had been helpless against its heart demon and could only think of borrowing the ice soul jade bed to help it wake up. But now, to Chin, this little heart demon wasn't worth mentioning at all. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger between its eyes. There seemed to be a cracking sound in his ears, followed by a faint scream of hate, unwillingness, and resentment. Chin, coldly snorted. He lifted his hand and grasped it. The scream disappeared, completely erased. White Ape revealed a look of envy. If he had been 90% sure before, then he no longer had any doubts now. Chin had absolutely obtained the mark. Only the legendary ability could be so simple as to easily and cleanly exterminate the invisible heart demon. The upright, hard bone finally slumped down. Looking at how dispirited it was and how it had shrunk to less than 1/10 of its original size, it could be seen that it had suffered a great loss this time. Thinking about it, it wouldn't be able to move for a long period of time. The chicken overlord slowly woke up. As it saw Chin, it was stunned. It lifted its wings and rubbed its eyes. Then, with a loud cry, it began to cry out in grief and indignation. Chin, you've finally come to save me. Let me tell you, I was originally having a wonderful dream about cultivation. But just as I was deep in it and couldn't extricate myself, a white-furred old monkey appeared. He was simply a demon, and in my dream, he brutally and inhumanely ravaged me. If my consciousness could record the torment I suffered, then what you see now would be me with cuts and bruises all over my body. That bastard white-furred old monkey. I absolutely won't give up. Chin, you will help me, right? You will definitely help me. I have a premonition that he isn't a character from a dream. Sooner or later, I will meet him. At that time, I will definitely let that white-furred old monkey know what it means to suffer so much that you wish you were dead, and what it means to take revenge for the smallest grievance. The chicken overlord's originally aggrieved face was now completely twisted. When it contrasted with its tear-streaked face, one couldn't help but think of a single word, freak. Chin was silent for a moment. He looked at the chicken overlord with pity in his eyes, and then looked at the pale-faced White Ape behind it. White Ape's eyes seemed to be spitting fire. There was no need to say anything else. He lightly coughed, interrupting the chicken overlord that seemed as if it would continue to ramble on. Look behind you first. The chicken overlord wasn't satisfied with being interrupted. It thought that Chin really wasn't good at understanding others. It frowned and turned its head. It was as if one could hear the sound of its teeth aching because it had used too much strength. Chapter 835. The chicken overlord howled in grief. It clung to Chin thigh with its wings, but in the end it was carried away by the smiling White Ape. That's right, it really was smiling. Its expression was indifferent, and the corners of its lips curved up in a mysterious smile. Facing such a mysterious smile, Chin heart chilled. He watched as the White Ape carried the chicken overlord away, silently mourning for the chicken overlord. However, the reason that the White Ape gave him was sufficient and considerate. Chin had saved its life. As an old ape that knew how to repay favors, it had to repay him. It would be far too shameful to bring away such a useless junior like the chicken overlord. The White Ape would help train it and then send it back to Chin side. Thinking about it, Chin decided that there was no reason to refuse. He turned his head and looked at the Starfall archipelago that was only a tiny black in his line of sight. His eyes flashed. It's time to leave. Shwa! His figure moved and he held away. As for Dorlice, Old Lin, Yundai, and the others on the island, Chin wasn't worried. With Dorlice here, it would be easy to find him. All Chin needed to do was wait for them to catch up once he was a certain distance away. Starfall Archipelago had been saved. The Alliance had been saved. No one would have to die. Joyful moods echoed through the skies above the island. All the Alliance cultivators smiled, their expressions incomparably excited. But after the joy, the high-level figures of the Alliance began to feel apprehensive. The situation this time seemed to have gone a bit too far. No matter what the result was, the one in the sea had gone crazy for some reason and had nearly dragged Senior White Ape down with him. This was an indisputable fact, and Senior White Ape's appetite had always been very good. This time, he feared it would be even better. As the high-level figures of the Alliance thought about how the little wealth they had painstakingly accumulated was about to be torn away, they felt so pained they couldn't breathe. So sad. This wasn't the result they wanted. Bah! If Senior White Ape hadn't managed to kill the sea god, then they would have been truly miserable. Of course, it wasn't that there weren't a few people who were wondering why that old bastard, White Ape, hadn't perished together with the sea god. That would have been the most perfect ending. But no one dared to reveal these thoughts in their minds. Otherwise, if White Ape were to find out what they were thinking, they would die. Douglas said in a deep voice, "This time, Senior White Ape has saved the entire Alliance. We will agree to any request. I'm sure no one has any objections. Then, let us first do something else." According to the messages from several elders in the mystic realm, the descendant of the Western Tomb's Chin family, Chinyu, has formed a resonance with the sky-split jade annulus. This is the only result of the Alliance's countless attempts in 100,000 years. Compared to the price that the Alliance will have to pay, I believe that this is far more important. So, find Chinyu and bring him back to the Alliance. No matter what he wants or what requests he has, agree to them as long as they are reasonable. Invite him to become a member of the Alliance. Chin White, Alliance, Douglas said, his eyes. Spirit King. S and U he. And he. The entire Alliance began to move. The entrance to the mystic realm was opened, and all the cultivators that entered were brought back. However, Chinyu wasn't among them. He. Just like that, Chinyu disappeared from the face of the earth. The high-level figures of the Beast Trainer Alliance immediately locked onto Chinyu. They weren't stupid, so they immediately locked onto Chinyu. Did Chinyu have any companions when he entered the Alliance? Or who in the Alliance was closer to? Find these people and invite them to temporarily stay in the Alliance as guests. A sharp glint flashed across President Douglas' eyes. But once again, the Alliance elites missed. That's right, they were able to easily find Doralice, Elder Lin, Yundai, and even the Shui sisters. But when he arrived, the house was already empty. When he followed the clues and found Su Hongyi, she shook her head and said that she did not know anything. Because of Dongfang Han's death and the Su family's background, the Alliance couldn't force her to speak. However, with so many people, they couldn't just leave quietly. The entire sea region was within the Alliance's sphere of influence. If they wanted to, it wouldn't be difficult to find the whereabouts of several people. As the Beast Trainer Alliance was preparing to move, White Ape rushed over with a listless chicken overlord in one hand. He bluntly warned, "Since you are about to give me a generous gift, I will warn you. You had best not try to find any traces of Chinyu. Otherwise a great disaster will befall you." Like this, the matter was dropped. Although they didn't know what White Ape was basing his judgment on, no one in the Alliance dared to take the risk. Because looking at Senior White Ape's appearance, if the Alliance insisted on doing this, he would immediately flip out. Once White Ape flipped out, that would also be a great disaster. White Ape opened the Beast Trainer Alliance's storeroom and dove in. Half a day later, he left in satisfaction, leaving behind the pale-faced high-level figures of the Alliance. White Ape's original words were that it was fine to take half, but he gave them such important information today and also helped them avoid a great disaster. Taking 20% more wasn't excessive at all. What kind of important information was this? President Douglas's tall and sturdy body seemed to thin. His loose clothes fluttered in the wind, and he felt as if he were being hollowed out. On a ship heading towards the mainland, Dorlice and the others smoothly found Chinyu. She made up a very reasonable explanation for this, but Chinyu only chuckled in his heart. Dorlice carefully stared at Chinyu's face and suddenly said, after entering the Alliance's mystic realm, "What did you do?" Chinyu arched an eyebrow. "I didn't do anything." Dorlice sneered. "I would be an idiot to believe you. Tell me the truth. Was the reason the sea god went berserk because of you?" Chinyu immediately denied everything. His expression was extremely solemn, as if he were absolutely innocent and hadn't done anything at all. This involved the sky-split jade wall and the embryo egg mark inheritance. No matter who asked, Chinyu wouldn't say a single word. Dorlice had a solemn expression. "My intuition tells me that you are absolutely lying." Regarding this, Elder Lin expressed full approval. He looked at Chinyu in front of him, a dignified look in his eyes. Chinyu stood in front of him, but if he closed his eyes, he wouldn't be able to feel his aura at all. It was like he was an illusory shadow. And all of these changes occurred after Chinyu entered the mystic realm. Although he didn't dare say that the sea god going berserk was related to Chinyu, he was absolutely involved. Otherwise, why would such changes occur? This Chinyu was truly mysterious. Perhaps he should remind his master to be more cautious around him in order to avoid any accidents. Thus, the matter was left unsettled. Since Chinyu decided to hide it, no one would be able to detect it. Even if they suspected him, it was meaningless without evidence. Dorlice angrily coughed and left. But before she left, she glared at Chinyu and sneered, "Don't be so smug just yet." Chinyu soon understood her meaning. He looked at the Shui family sisters standing in front of him with nervous expressions and rubbed his temples. He suddenly felt that this action might cause the two sisters to overthink things. Chinyu put down his hand and asked, "What are your plans?" Shui Qingqing fiercely looked up, her eyes wide as she stared at Chinyu. She bit her lips and her face paled like a frightened little beast. Shuya pulled on her little sister's hand and forced herself to remain calm. She said, "Big brother Qin, once we reach the shore, we can walk by ourselves. We thank you for taking care of us these past days. We sisters will always remember this in our hearts." Qin Yu was silent for a moment. Then he slowly said, "Don't think too much about it. Since you appeared here, I will definitely make arrangements for you. But I still have important matters to attend to right now. There might be dangers, so it isn't suitable for you to stay by my side. So if you have a place you want to go, I can send you there. Otherwise, leave it to me to make arrangements." Shui Qingqing's eyes turned red. "Big brother Qin, we have nowhere else to go." Shuya pursed her lips. She knew that with Chinyu's personality, since he was so straightforward, he didn't want to be entangled with them. There was no chance for them to stay by his side. Having a safe place to stay was the best result for the two sisters. "I will follow Big Brother Qin's arrangements." Qin Yu's thoughts raced. With his current status, whether it was the Dark Parliament or the Western Tomb Divine Church, it would be easy for him to arrange things for the Shui family sisters. But between him and these two sides, the most he could do was feign civility and use each other. If he sent the Shui family sisters there, he might be able to obtain a moment of peace, but he feared he would harm them in the end. As for Chinyu, he owed them a favor. If it weren't for the Dao monarch's blood that the Shui family sisters had given him, Chinyu feared he wouldn't have had the chance to fuse with the embryo, and the result could be imagined. This could be considered an indirect, life-saving grace. Although Chinyu had saved the Shui family sisters more than once, something like grace couldn't be calculated in terms of the number of times. From this point of view, Chinyu believed that he had to make appropriate arrangements for them. After considering it again and again, Chinyu thought of Dragon City. First, because of the ancient's consciousness, the Dragon Soul would be allies for a short period of time. And there was also the Shadow Clan in Dragon City, and Jolie was there. With her temperament, If she knew that Qin Yu had arranged for the Shui family sisters to come here, she would definitely look after them. With these 2 layers of protection, the Shui family sisters' safety wouldn't be a problem. As for more, such as whether or not the Shui family sisters wanted to go and whether or not they could adapt to life in Dragon City, Qin Yu couldn't consider these things. Now I have a choice here. A moment later, the Shui family sisters earnestly bowed and bid their farewells. They agreed to go to Dragon City and didn't show any objections. Qin Yu felt that it was best to be more dependable with such tactful people. He didn't feel comfortable with Senior Lin participating, but he also didn't want to make a trip to Dragon City. If he encountered Zhou Li, it would only be awkward. Thus, he had Dorlice make the trip. She was strong enough, and she had clearly become more annoying recently. If she left for a period of time, she would be able to have some peace and quiet. Qin Yu knocked on Dorlice's cabin door. It was unknown what they spoke about, but when Qin Yu left feeling refreshed, Dorlice's face was so gloomy that it seemed as if it would drip water. But in the end, she still agreed to send the Shui family sisters to Dragon City. The ship temporarily stopped at a supply island. Qin Yu saw the Shui family sisters off and cupped his hands together. We'll meet again someday. Shui Qingqing opened her mouth. Big brother Qin, she had many words to say, but she couldn't say a single one. Shui Heya grabbed her hand. Big brother Qin, we bid our farewells. Dorlice curled her lips. Even a blind person could see the friendship in these 2 little girls' eyes. Yet, this brat Qin Yu wasn't moved at all. How heartless. Let's go, let's go. We still have a long way to go. Let's hurry and change ships. They boarded a ship in another direction. Even after they were far away, Qin Yu could still see the 2 women waving at him from the deck. Yundai quietly said, Teacher, you are far too popular. This makes this disciple feel a great pressure. Qin Yu lifted a hand and rapped her on the head. What nonsense. Let's go. He turned and boarded the ship. Some people, some feelings, were destined to miss each other. His heart was already full, and he didn't have time to care about anything else. He hoped that they would be well in the future. Chapter 836. After sending off the Shui sisters, one of his worries had been lifted. Qin Yu sat on the deck, quietly looking at the sea and sky in front of him. Waves tumbled about, reflecting the deep blue sky. Accompanied by the gentle sea breeze, it was a rare sight of tranquility and tranquility. Yundai thought for a moment. She moved a chair to the side and placed it down. Teacher, can I sit here? Without waiting for Qin Yu to respond, she turned and sat down. Then, she casually stretched her waist, outlining her soft and beautiful curves. After becoming familiar with her teacher's character and with the idea of seducing him, her respect for Qin Yu didn't diminish, but the fear in her heart had mostly faded. Qin Yu shook his head and closed his eyes. You've already sat down. Can I let you leave? Hearing the helplessness in his voice, Yundai giggled. Of course I won't leave. And I don't think teacher would do such a thing. Qin Yu didn't respond. Yundai didn't care. She leaned back in her chair, feeling incomparably at ease. The feeling of staying by her teacher's side was really good after a moment. Yundai spoke up once more. The sea is too quiet today. It's like I'm on the surface of a tranquil lake. With his eyes closed, Qin Yu frowned. What did you say? Yundai blinked. I said that the sea is really quiet, the last part. It's like I'm on the surface of a tranquil lake. Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. He looked at the tranquil sea in front of him and gradually frowned. Dorlice, he whispered and took a step forward. Wait here. Before his voice fell, Qin Yu had already flown out of the ship. As his feet fell, the tranquil mirror-like space suddenly shattered, revealing a gap. The sky inside was dark and waves surged. One could clearly hear the angry roar of the sea. As Qin Yu entered, the gap vanished from sight. Shua! Senior Lin appeared in front of Yundai. He asked in a low voice, "What happened? Where did Mr. go?" Yundai opened her mouth. "I don't know." She was still in a daze. "Qin, you stepped out of the mirror world." As he left the constructed scene, he saw what was happening above the sea. Violent winds howled without end, sweeping up endless waves that soared into the sky and rained down with a rumbling sound, as if a torrential rain was pouring down. Looking up through the waves, Qin, you could clearly feel chaotic auras coming from that direction. One of them was Dorlice. On the other side, the ones that were frantically besieging her were the giant spirit clan. Whoosh! Qin Yu instantly accelerated. The air screeched as he raced away. The sturdy ship sailed on the turbulent sea, emitting ear-piercing screeches. If it weren't for the fact that the two sides were fighting each other, the ship would have already disintegrated and been swallowed by the rolling black seawater. The Shui sisters hid in the ship's hold, their faces pale as they looked at the two sides fighting above the ship. When the group of cultivators from the giant spirit clan appeared, their first thought was that they were coming for them. However, they soon discovered that this was not the case. The goal of these giants was Dorlice, and it was only at this moment that the Shui sisters realized just how terrifying Dorlice was. Even when fighting against so many, she didn't fall into a disadvantage at all. In fact, the feeling she gave off at this moment was that everything was under her control. Transparent and bright, holy light carried with it a burning hot aura. All of the giant spirit clan cultivators that rushed towards her were forced back. Moreover, as time passed, they discovered to their horror that their strength was being suppressed and that it was constantly fading away. In the skies above their heads, holy light constantly gathered. It nearly condensed into essence and emitted a horrifying aura. This feeling was like a mountain falling on their chests, making it hard for them to breathe. This woman was actually so strong, and yet she was willing to follow by Qin Yu's side. Then his true strength. It turns out that Big Brother Qin is fiercer than we thought. This misunderstanding caused Qin Yu's status in the hearts of the Shui sisters to rapidly rise. However, they soon discovered that their understanding of Qin Yu's position wasn't as accurate as before. "We can't kill her. We have to retreat." A giant spirit clan cultivator roared out. He lifted his hand and punched out, shattering the holy light. But the fragments of holy light still tore open large wounds on his body. The giant spirit clan cultivator frowned. He stomped his feet and turned to leave. Dorlice had an indifferent expression, and her eyes were icy cold. "You remnant of the giant spirit clan, you dare to appear in front of me on your own initiative. All of you will die." Bang! Endless holy light burned above her head. The temperature between the heavens and earth crazily soared, and the seawater below began to boil. At this time, Dorlice suddenly furrowed her eyebrows. She lifted her hand, and the burning holy light split into several pieces, each of them rapidly collapsing and contracting, condensing into blazing meteors that came crashing down. Every holy light meteor locked onto a large number of giant spirit clan cultivators, suppressing their auras. Besides resisting them head-on, there was no other way. The giant spirit clan cultivators that were locked onto revealed looks of despair. They suddenly realized that killing Dorlice after receiving the message was an incomparably wrong decision. Hum! Hum! Space suddenly shook, turning into sticky mud that wrapped around the falling holy light meteors. They rapidly slowed down until they finally came to a complete stop. The giant spirit clan cultivators that had just escaped death looked up at the approaching holy light meteors, their hearts filled with panic. They were certain that if they allowed these meteors to fall, everyone in the giant spirit clan would die without a grave. Dorlice's eyes brightened before returning to tranquility. She turned around, her face filled with grievance. "Qin Yu, they came to kill me on their own initiative. Do you still want to stop them?" Qin Yu had no expression. "No wonder you suddenly agreed to send them to Dragon City. You should have already sensed the aura of the giant spirit clan cultivators." Dorlice met his gaze and didn't deny it. She curled her lips and said, I didn't ask them to kill me. Chinyu said, I guarantee that the giant spirit clan won't attack you again in the future. Let them go. Dorelice's eyebrows arched up. Chinyu, I already gave you face once. Then I'll give it again. Don't go too far. Dorlice had a fierce expression. Chinyu no longer looked at her. He flicked his sleeves, and space fluctuated. All of the burning, holy light meteors were slowly swallowed up. His eyes swept over the giant spirit clan cultivators. After a moment of silence, he said, For countless years, the giant spirit clan has paid a great price. Now, you can let go and return to where you live in peace. Quietly wait for the arrival of a new era and welcome the rebirth of your people. Believe me, that day won't be too far away. Who are you? Why did you save us? A tall giant spirit clan cultivator asked. Patriarch, it was this lord who saved us in vast sea city. Several giant spirit clan cultivators stood up and nodded towards Chinyu with gratitude. Hong Zhao took a deep breath. She loudly said, After the High Ancestor and the others were killed, it was this lord who brought us out of the yellow sand world. If it weren't for him, we would have already died. She respectfully bowed. The current patriarch's complexion changed. He bowed and said, Thank you for helping my giant spirit clan several times. He straightened himself and said, But ever since my clan was born, we have shouldered a mission that we could not shirk. We can only thank you for your good intentions. Chinyu furrowed his eyebrows. His aura suddenly changed, like a great beast awakening. A vast and ancient aura of time spread out, covering all the giant spirit clan cultivators. This dual suppression came from the bloodline and the soul, causing the complexions of the giant spirit clan cultivators to change. They involuntarily fell to the ground, their hearts filled with submission. This is the current patriarch's eyes widened. His body shivered with excitement. Hong Zhao was the only giant spirit clan cultivator who could still look up at Chinyu. She could feel his aura and her face flushed red. Chinyu slowly said, In the yellow sand world, I have smoothly revived and returned. The giant spirit clan's mission has been completed. All of you can follow my orders. Hong Zhao's tears flowed down. So the High Ancestor and the others hadn't died in vain. They had exhausted their lives to help their master revive. The current patriarch deeply bowed. Yes, master. Chinyu was well aware that as long as he wanted to, he could easily obtain the loyalty of the giant spirit clan and have them do anything for him. But at the level that Chinyu had touched upon, even if the giant spirit clan used all of their strength, they would still be as fragile as a bubble that could be easily destroyed. If so, then he might as well release them and return the freedom of this sad clan. The giant spirit clan left, their hearts filled with endless joy and longing. The mission of their clan's inheritance had been completed, and they no longer needed to shoulder such a heavy burden. When their master stood at the peak of the world once more, they would no longer need to hide and live like they did now. They would be able to walk under the sun with dignity and dignity. The Shui sisters were crowded around as they boarded the giant spirit clan's hidden ship at the bottom of the sea. Since something like the giant spirit clan had happened, there was no meaning in going to Dragon City. The giant spirit clan's territory was the safest. Even now, their hearts were shaken. They never imagined that Big Brother Qin would be able to hide himself so deeply. Just who was he? Shui Qingqing bit her lips. The hope in her eyes slowly extinguished before finally returning to silence. Seeing all of this, Shuiya reached out a hand and squeezed her palm. She said in a soft voice, Silly girl, how come you still don't understand? Big Brother Qin is a divine dragon that soars through the highest heavens. He isn't someone we can think about. To be able to get to know him and spend some time with him is already our greatest stroke of luck. Otherwise, we would already be dead by now. Shui Qingqing was silent for a moment. She wiped her eyes and said, I understand, big sister. She revealed a smile. I won't have any other thoughts, but I will remember Big Brother Chin for the rest of my life. Shwe Aya traced her hair and sighed inwardly. Wasn't she the same? It was just that she didn't have the courage to say it out loud like this silly girl. Big Brother Chin, if we never meet again, then I wish you a safe and peaceful life. Chin didn't know that in the distance, on a ship sailing through the sea, there were two women silently wishing him well in their hearts. But he was well aware that he wouldn't be able to rest in peace for some time. This was because Dorlice had snuck into his room in the middle of the night. And most importantly, this woman was wearing skimpy clothes. It was appropriate to say that she was ragged, or barely clothed. Dorlice stared at Chin and lowered her voice. You've already ruined my plans twice. Tell me, how do you plan on compensating me? She licked her lips. If you don't have any ideas, perhaps I can give you a suggestion. How about you repay a debt of gratitude with your body? Chin rubbed his temples. Have you gone crazy this time? If there's nothing else, then hurry up and go back to sleep. Dorlice sneered. Do you know that in this situation, speaking like this to a woman is the greatest disrespect? Chapter 837. Dorlice pulled out a chair and sat down. Her expression was icy cold and her aura was overwhelming. I've already given you the suggestion. If you don't want to, then come up with another plan. I will definitely accept this favor today. Her cold words combined with her expressionless face really caused the pressure to multiply. But was it appropriate for her to be dressed so thinly at this time? Chin moved to the side to avoid eye contact. This was because he was worried that if he looked over, he would be able to see everything under Dorlice's skirt. This woman's sitting posture was far too overbearing. He had no choice but to avoid it. Dorlice. Chin paused for a moment. His tone relaxed a great deal. Sit down first and put on some clothes. If there is anything, we can sit down and slowly discuss it. Dorlice blinked, a bit surprised. She looked at Chin, a look of suspicion on her face. Are you really willing to talk to me? Chin nodded. I am. Then tell me, do you agree to pay with your body? Chin bitterly smiled. Dorlice, you are beautiful to begin with, and the body you are borrowing now is also beautiful and alluring. As for me, I am a normal man. It's just that today was too sudden. Can you give me an explanation? Dorlice's eyebrows arched up. Turn around, and I will tell you. Chin was silent for a moment, and then slowly turned around. He tried his best to not look sideways, but he still accidentally saw something he shouldn't have seen. This woman, she was actually playing in a vacuum. Chin's mind buzzed as he fell into chaos. He really couldn't figure out just what Dorlice was thinking. Even if she was extremely hungry and thirsty, it shouldn't have suddenly erupted to such a degree, right? Her eyes swept over Chin's face, and she charmingly smiled. Do I look good? Do you want me to come over so you can see me more clearly? Chin coughed. You still haven't given me an explanation. Dorlice's eyebrows arched up. It's such a simple matter. Today, when you released the giant spirit, your manly aura burst forth and immediately captured the passionate heart of others. They couldn't help but want to eat you up. Are you satisfied with this answer? Chin was so angry that he almost laughed. Satisfied my ass. If I really believed your nonsense, then I would be the fool. But at this time, he couldn't lay all his cards on the table. Just now, he had felt fluctuations coming from the ancient's consciousness. It was very well hidden. If it wasn't for the fact that he had fused with the jade wall embryo egg, which made his entire body as transparent as jade, he wouldn't have been able to detect it at all. Chin instantly understood what the ancient's goal was. He wanted to probe and see whether or not Chin was still under his control. Thinking about it, it was because after fusing with the jade egg, Chin's aura had changed, causing the ancient to have some sort of scruples. Thus, Chin had to act as if he didn't know anything about the arrival of the ancient's consciousness. He even had to cooperate with him and give him a chance to verify his suspicions. For instance, if he was suddenly interrupted when the man and woman were burning with passion? If you still don't believe me, then you're awesome. As Qin Yu's thoughts raced, he remained silent. Across from him, Dorlice began to move. Although her intuition told her that Qin Yu was acting a bit strange today, how could she miss such a great opportunity? After fusing with the jade egg, not only was the ancient able to feel it, but Dorlice could also feel the inexplicable changes in Qin Yu's body. Moreover, because she was at his side, this feeling was even clearer. She suddenly felt that the contingency plan she left in Qin Yu's body was no longer foolproof. She had to reinforce it a second time. The method of reinforcement was simple. As long as Qin Yu couldn't hold himself back and fuse together with the body she controlled, then this boy absolutely wouldn't be able to overturn the heavens in the future. No matter what he did, he could only obediently be a puppet in her hands. She closed in 2 or 3 steps. Her hands reached out, and Qin Yu immediately felt a surging sense of oppression. Damn, this was definitely the real deal. It would definitely feel good to the touch. Steady, don't think about it, don't think about it. Dorlice moved closer to his ear. She let out a deep breath and said, "Do you want to touch it?" "Really, I don't mind at all." Qin Yu could feel the fluctuations coming from the ancient's consciousness. It was clear that, at this time, the ancient was carefully observing him. Qin Yu secretly clenched his teeth and wrapped his arms around Dorlice's waist. Her tentacles were as soft as he expected. With a light cry, Dorlice felt as if all her bones had been pulled out. She softly leaned against Qin Yu. Her breathing became short and deep. She tightened her grip around Qin Yu's neck, as if she wanted to rub her entire body into his. At the same time, the aura that Dorlice emitted had a hint of sweetness to it. It was like mellow wine, causing one's heart to beat faster and their faces to flush red. It was like a flame hidden in the depths of their hearts was ignited. Qin Yu secretly grinned. He didn't think that this woman would actually be hiding such a card. Her methods of seducing the heart were quite sharp. If it were anyone else, or if their will wasn't firm enough, then even if they had other thoughts, they might have turned this fake play into reality. Damn it, the ancient didn't seem to have any intention of interfering at all. Did he have a hobby of watching live pornography? If that really was the case, then there was nothing Qin Yu could do. Acting to this step had nearly reached his limit. To ride on a horse and look down on everyone with disdain, that was absolutely impossible. The arms around his neck moved downwards. Qin Yu stiffened, just as he was about to tear away all pretense of cordiality and do whatever he wanted. A fluctuation of strength suddenly erupted and sent Dorlice flying away. Dorlice had been in a daze just a moment ago, and her face was flushed red. But in the blink of an eye, she regained her clarity of mind. Her eyes locked onto Qin Yu, or to be more precise, they passed through his body and met the distant ancient's gaze. After several breaths of time, she lifted a hand and yawned. She lazily stood up and said, "What a disappointment. Qin Yu, it looks like this is all we can do today. We will have many more chances in the future." She tossed him a coquettish glance and then gracefully left. Qin Yu revealed an awkward expression. Hidden deep in his eyes was a perfectly timed anger. This was the perfect expression of his emotions. The ancient's voice sounded out in his mind. "I know that with your current age, you still haven't put down the matters between men and women, but you absolutely cannot touch a woman like Dorlice. Otherwise there will be no end to your troubles. Do you understand?" Qin Yu's embarrassment deepened. He bowed his head and cupped his hands together. "Yes, I will remember." There was a bit of unwillingness in his voice, but it was also because of this that he seemed even more normal. After all, facing an incomparably beautiful woman like Dorlice, who had clearly expressed her willingness to let him have a taste of her body, any normal man would feel a bit unwilling if they were stopped. And Qin Yu had been just a tiny bit away from succeeding. The ancient lightly said, "You will know in the future that I am doing this for your own good." After a pause, it continued to say, I have already made my preparations. Do not delay any further, and return to Sky Declaring Pavilion as soon as possible. Schwa, the consciousness, scattered. As for what Qin Yu experienced in the Beast Trainer Alliance, he didn't ask a single question. Perhaps it was because the ancient believed that everything was under his control, or perhaps he had a premonition that even if he asked, he wouldn't obtain any harvests. Qin Yu closed his eyes and sensed his surroundings. After determining that the ancient had truly left, he let out a light breath, a dignified expression on his face. It was only at this moment, after facing the true world, that he truly felt just how powerful the ancient's consciousness was. No wonder he dared to fake his death and even dared to abandon his mortal body to scheme against a Tao monarch in order to avoid the calamity of the ancient race. So it was because he had such great confidence. Qin Yu rejoiced in his heart. If it weren't for a lucky chance that allowed him to fuse with the jade embryo egg, then even if the ancient's heart was truly in his control, he feared he still wouldn't have been able to escape death in the end. As for Dorlice, this woman had likely underestimated the true strength of the ancient's consciousness. If she competed with him on the Tao monarch's great Tao, there was no chance at all. But soon, Qin Yu discovered that he had underestimated Dorlice a bit. There was a knock on the door once more. A neatly dressed Dorlice stood outside. She met Qin Yu's eyes and directly said, Has the ancient's consciousness left? Qin Yu frowned. Dorlice lightly said, Don't worry, I didn't use any methods to monitor you. It was just that your reaction just now was too abnormal. Qin Yu was silent for a moment. You already sensed it? Dorlice said, It wasn't too early, but I wasn't as stupid as you think I was. She swept her eyes over him. Looking at your current state, you should have smoothly passed. Do you want to celebrate? For instance, we can continue what we were doing just now. She blinked. I don't mind at all. In fact, I'm even looking forward to it in my heart. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Since you know the inside story, don't mess around. Dorlice looked at him. She suddenly said, Qin Yu, you are absolutely hiding something. Qin Yu, with your cautious temperament, if you didn't have absolute confidence that our conversation wouldn't be discovered, why would you dare to speak with me here? You have to know that I reminded you before that the ancient's consciousness can sense what is happening around you. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Indeed, looking down on a woman was a very stupid thing to do. Dorlice might have underestimated the strength of the ancient's consciousness, but her intelligence wasn't low. Moreover, for him to make such a big mistake and not realize Dorlice's goal, it was clear that his mind had been thrown into confusion by what happened just now. Indeed, men were creatures. No matter how calm their hearts were or how clear their thoughts were, when they faced a beautiful woman, their sensitivity would be greatly reduced. Impulses and desires would even affect their minds for a short period of time. This was a lesson he had to remember. Dorlice smiled. Qin Yu, aren't you reflecting on your actions now? Let me tell you, don't waste your energy. To a man, it is impossible to guard against a woman's tricks. All right, since you have no intention of continuing our fate, I will go back and rest, of course, if you can figure it out. You are welcome to come over at any time. My door isn't locked. Turning around, the smile on Dorlice's face faded and a cold intent appeared in her eyes. She had indeed guessed that Qin Yu was using her to numb the ancient's consciousness. Moreover, she had used this chance to determine that there were other secrets hidden on Qin Yu's body. But in fact, Dorlice didn't obtain any harvests. Instead, this made her even more certain that the card she left on Qin Yu's body might not be of absolute use. In other words, if she couldn't reinforce it, it was likely that Qin Yu would escape her control in the future. But this boy was slippery, and it was clear he had scruples about her. If she wanted to pull him into bed with her, it would be a bit difficult. Should she detonate her card now and forcefully control Qin Yu to force him to submit? Or should she wait a little longer and look for the next opportunity? Dorlice fell into deep thought. After watching her vanish around the corner, Qin Yu returned to his room and closed the door. His expression became indifferent. During their conversation, just now, the runes hidden within the ancient's heart in his chest had emitted a strange fluctuation. It was clear that Dorlice had some other thoughts. Chapter 838. Half a month later, Qin Yu's group of 4 returned to Sky Declaring Pavilion. Senior Lin immediately bid his farewells and left. Without any delay, he entered the chamber, and after determining that he wasn't being monitored, he opened the communication array formation. In the golden basin in front of him, ripples appeared on the still water surface. Then a blurry face appeared. Shua, this face opened its eyes. They were calm, like the water of an ancient icy spring, emitting a cold chill that reached deep into the soul. What happened? As the water rippled, a calm voice sounded out in the chamber. Senior Lin bowed, his voice extremely respectful. Reporting to Master, I followed Ningqin to the Beast Trainer Alliance. Immediately, he briefly explained what happened, but he gave an extremely detailed description of the changes that occurred to Qin Yu's body. Master, Ningqin's origins are mysterious, and his background is beyond what you can see. This old servant earnestly asks Master to consider this carefully and act cautiously. If Master agrees, this old servant can think of a way to probe him. The face in the water ripples said, I already understand what you are saying. There's no need to probe him any further. Bring him here as soon as possible. Senior Lin was startled. He immediately bowed, Yes, Master. Shua, the face vanished from sight. The basin instantly returned to tranquility without a single ripple. Senior Lin straightened his body. His eyebrows relaxed, and a thoughtful look appeared in his eyes. With his master's temperament, since he made such arrangements, he must have complete confidence in himself. If so, then he wouldn't need to worry too much. In a quiet chamber far away, a round hole was opened in the ceiling. A foot-wide beam of light shined down from it, shining brightly and reaching the ground. But the light that shined through the hole didn't spread out at all. It only left behind a foot-wide dot on the ground. Everything outside was pitch black. It was thick like ink, so thick that it couldn't be dissolved. It seemed as if one looked at it, they would be swallowed up. Suddenly, a man's calm voice echoed out from the darkness. Ningqin has returned to Mid-Morning City. I have already ordered people to bring him here as soon as possible. After a brief silence, the darkness responded, You must be careful of this person. Although his cultivation is weak, I still feel a trace of fear towards him. Of course, I won't be careless against someone who you treat with caution. Now that I think about it, although Master was powerful, he was a failure in his life. Everyone around him that he could trust chose to betray him in the end. I have to say that this is a kind of tragedy. Shut up. Don't be rude to Master. The voice on the other side was icy cold, and every word was filled with killing intent. No matter what, it was Master who gave us life. This will never change. I don't want to hear such disrespectful words a second time. Do you understand? Since you don't want to hear it, then I won't say it. Anyway, compared to action, words are really pale and powerless. The first voice that sounded was very calm, without the slightest bit of anger from being scolded. He smiled and said, Let's go and make the final preparations to welcome the arrival of our master. Qin Yu and old Lin spoke in private for some time. Then he stood up and saw him off. He returned to the living room and sat down on the sofa. He rubbed his chin. Although old Lin's statement just now was a bit vague, Qin Yu was still able to capture his true meaning. The master of Sky Declaring Pavilion was anxious and hoped that he could finish his preparations as soon as possible. This was in line with the ancient's request, but he didn't immediately agree. Rather, he thought of a way to delay it for the time being. Dorlice and Yun Dai walked into the living room. Dorlice looked over Qin Yu and suddenly said, Qin Yu, what bad idea do you have now? Qin Yu, what kind of eyes did this woman have? Weren't they a bit too good? If she didn't take care of her eyesight, she might end up with cataracts in the future. Qin Yu lightly coughed and didn't look at her. He turned to Yundai and smiled. During this period of time, you've been diligently cultivating. I don't have much to help you with, so I'll give you some things you need to cultivate. Yundai, make a list as soon as possible. There's no need to save anything for me. I will do my best to satisfy your requests. That's right. Qin Yu was prepared to fleece them one last time. Once the ancient got rid of the myriad dragon body, who knew what the situation would become, he might as well take advantage of this opportunity to make some money. Dorlice blinked. Count me in. Qin, you didn't even look at her. What the hell? You haven't done anything at all, and you want to take a piece of the pie? Are you dreaming? And most importantly, why would I give you any benefits? So that you can recover more strength and become more formidable, so that you can make things difficult for me? Haha, I'm not that stupid. Even if you beat me to death, I wouldn't do something like supporting an enemy. In the end, Dorlice stomped her feet in anger. But she wasn't able to change Qin Yu's mind. She could faintly guess what Qin Yu was thinking, but she clenched her teeth and endured it. Surname Qin, just you wait. Once this old lady takes control of the situation in the future, I will make sure you drink the water I wash my feet with every day. The next 2 days were quiet and peaceful. Just as old Lin was wondering whether or not his words were too vague and Qin Yu didn't understand the deeper meaning behind them, the pale-faced Bien Changli from the Internal Affairs Division arrived at his residence. With a trembling hand, he handed him a jade slip list. Old Lin, this is the purchase list that Mr. Ning Qin submitted today. I cannot make the decision myself, so I ask that you decide for me. As Bien Changli spoke, he couldn't help but gulp. Beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. Although old Lin had already guessed from his expression that the contents of this purchase list would be astonishing, when he opened it and looked at it for himself, he still couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air and nearly flip the table. Too much. Ning Qin, you have gone too far. You have already done something similar before. I originally thought that your greed was already very strong, but I never thought I would underestimate you. So it turns out that your mouth can be opened so wide. Bien, Changli scowled. Old Lin, you cannot let go this time. Otherwise, even if you empty out the entire Mid-Morning City branch division, it still won't be enough. You must solemnly declare to the Tower Master that you must severely crack down on this type of extortion and embezzlement. Old Lin took a deep breath and stabilized his blood pressure. He coldly said, I will immediately contact the master. He turned and left. A moment later, Bien Changli left the courtyard in a daze. He first rubbed his forehead and then looked up at the sun. I don't have a fever, it's daytime, and I'm not dreaming. So why did the Tower Master agree? The entire Sky Declaring Pavilion was operating at full capacity, mobilizing a massive amount of materials and wealth. They didn't hesitate to pay any price to purchase and trade precious treasures. The entire world was shocked. No one knew just what they were doing that would cause such a massive movement. Countless secret agents swarmed over. The hidden agents buried within Sky Declaring Pavilion were also activated in an attempt to find out what was going on. But regarding this matter, Sky Declaring Pavilion was clearly prepared and had prepared a foolproof method to deal with it. None of them were able to obtain any useful information. But there were some people that didn't need any investigation or evidence to determine just what was going on with this massive turmoil. For instance, Feng Qing. The movement of materials within Sky Declaring Pavilion naturally couldn't be concealed from her. In front of others, she appeared calm and steady, handling everything in an orderly manner. But as she lay on her bed in the dark of night, fear swallowed her up like the darkness around her. Fear, restlessness, anxiety, and even despair. All sorts of emotions wove together in her heart, colliding with each other. But Feng Qing didn't dare to reveal any of them. No matter how close she was to her maids or confidants, she couldn't reveal even half a word. Feng Qing was waiting. She was waiting for a reasonable opportunity. Before then, she couldn't reveal anything wrong. Otherwise, a great disaster would befall her. On the 7th day of recklessly purchasing precious materials, Feng Qing finally found such an opportunity. She would personally deliver a batch of materials to the lakeside courtyard. But what left Feng Qing in despair was that when she arrived at the lakeside courtyard, old Lin was already waiting for her. He calmly bowed and said, "Miss, you can leave these matters to this old servant. Please return." Feng Qing squeezed out a smile, trying her best to appear calm. "I didn't know that old Lin had already returned. With you here, there naturally won't be any problems. There are still many matters that need to be dealt with, so I'll be leaving first." Old Lin bowed. "See you out, miss." Feng Qing turned. At this time, Yun Dai suddenly appeared. She loudly said, "Miss Feng Qing, please wait a moment." She quickly walked out. Several days ago, there were several materials that didn't meet the requirements. Teacher has compiled a list and asks you to prepare another one. Ah, to think that there would be such a thing. Mr. Ning Qin, please rest assured that I will prepare it as soon as possible. Feng Qing received the jade slip and probed it with her divine sense. In the next moment, she relaxed. Old Lin frowned. He stepped forwards and said, "Miss, these matters have always been handled by this old servant. How about I handle them instead?" Feng Qing smiled. "That should be the case. Then I'll have to trouble old Lin. I will ruthlessly punish those incompetent subordinates and prevent similar matters from happening again." Old Lin nodded. "Miss is too considerate." He received the jade slip and probed it with his divine sense for several breaths of time. When he didn't sense anything wrong, he relaxed a little. It seemed he had been too sensitive, but he didn't care. He was more cautious. This matter concerned his master's great cause, and he couldn't afford to be negligent. As for Qinyu, although his master seemed to have everything under his control, old Lin still found it hard to dispel a bit of dread in his heart. Feng Qing bid her farewells and left. Compared to the calm expression she had when she arrived, her heart was filled with worry. Although she was still worried, she had calmed down a great deal. The jade slip just now had only listed the names of several items, but it also included the words peace and heart. Feng Qing didn't believe that it was a coincidence that Qin Yu had Yun Dai deliver the jade slip to her. These two words were clearly meant for her. Since Qin Yu wanted her to feel at ease, he must have remembered his previous promise. Right now, he was Feng Qing's only hope. In the lakeside courtyard, Yun Dai entered the living room. "Teacher, Miss Yun Dai has already looked through the jade slip." Qin Yu nodded. "I understand." Seeing that she hadn't left yet, he looked up and met his disciple's worried eyes. After a moment of thought, he smiled and said, "Don't worry, it'll be fine." Yun Dai was aware of the contents of the purchase order he had proposed. Since Sky Declaring Pavilion had directly agreed to it, it was clear there was some hidden meaning behind it. For such a massive amount of wealth to be obtained, the risks he would face would inevitably be directly proportional. Yun Dai nodded. "I believe in teacher. You will definitely be able to deal with it. Then I will go and cultivate." She bowed and excused herself. She clenched her fists. She had to work even harder. She didn't expect to be able to protect teacher, but she could at least help him in some matters. She didn't need to bear everything by herself. Dorlice flashed out. She looked in the direction that Yun Dai left and smiled. "This little girl, her temperament isn't bad at all." Qin Yu lightly said, "I only care about those that are good to me." With a double meaning, he went straight to the point. "All right, let's talk about your preparations. This is going to be a tough battle. If something goes wrong, we will all be in deep trouble." Dorlice smiled charmingly. "Don't worry, this big sister loves you. I will definitely do my best and not let anything happen to you." She walked over and whispered several words to him. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. "Is that true? How do you know?" Chapter 839. Reality proved that there was no such thing as a meat pie falling from the sky. Even if it did, it would only be wrapped in a layer of sugar and filled with colorful seasonings. For instance, when Chinyu pulled out all the wool he could get, Sky Declaring Pavilion had given in and agreed to offer up all sorts of treasures. The truth was that there was something fishy going on here. If it were the Chinyu of the past, even if he was careful, he still wouldn't have been able to sense it. But now, Sky Declaring Pavilion's secret methods couldn't be hidden at all. There weren't many suspicious objects, and the objects themselves were of excellent quality. The only thing that appeared was the aura on their surfaces. These auras were incomparably weak and similar to the objects they were stuck to. If one wasn't careful, they would easily overlook them. Even if one sensed them, the aura itself wasn't wrong. This was the brilliance of the person who prepared all of this. There were 23 different auras, and each one was harmless. Even if they were placed together, unless all 23 of them were gathered together, there wouldn't be any change. But Chinyu had found all the items that were stuck to the 23 auras. At this time, he grasped his fingers together, and an invisible strength wove between his fingertips. It was like a barrier imprisoning the gray gas that was trying to escape. A dark golden light flashed in Chinyu's eyes. The gray gas in his eyes suddenly enlarged, revealing its essence. These were tiny gray beetles. They bit each other, head to tail connected. As they felt the situation wasn't good for them, all of them became anxious and restless. Suddenly, the gray beetles seemed to feel Chinyu's gaze. They all shivered and fell silent, as if they had fallen into hibernation. There was no more movement. These little things actually knew how to play dead. How interesting. Chinyu's eyes flashed. He thought for a moment and lifted his other hand. With a thought, a drop of dark red blood seeped out, quietly piercing through the invisible barrier and falling into the gray gas. The gray beetles that seemed to be hibernating instantly revived. They revealed fierce expressions and directly divided up the blood. Chinyu lightly coughed, and his face paled for a moment. But he soon restored himself and sneered. He had already pulled out the bait. Now he just had to see whether or not they would take the bait. If he used it well, he might be able to create a great surprise. There was a hole in the ceiling, and bright light shone down, but the surroundings were pitch black. A chuckle suddenly sounded out. In my opinion, you seem to have overestimated that Ning Qin. He's already under my control. After a long period of silence, a voice sounded out from the other side. Whether you believe me or not, I will remind you once more. This Qin you has always given me an unusual feeling. The truth is right in front of us. Are you sure you can control him? The first voice sneered. Humph. I can absorb the strength of the backlash from my body and turn it into a controllable curse. As long as it touches his flesh and blood, it can immediately lock onto him. No matter how many methods he has, he will never be able to escape. You should know about the backlash my main body suffered in the past. Do you still think that Ning Qin has the strength to resist? Controlling him is equivalent to cutting off Master's last path of retreat. As long as this goes smoothly, you and I can truly be reborn. I hope you're right. As soon as he finished speaking, the other side fell silent. In the darkness, a cold and gloomy laugh echoed out. Of course I'm right. From the beginning, I have always been right. Master, I have respected you for countless years, feared you for countless years, hid for countless years, and hated you for countless years. Now, I desperately hope that you can come a little earlier. I will wait for you to come and settle all of our grudges. What that woman Dorlice said was actually true. Chinyu sent a message to the Dark Parliament through a secret channel and soon received a response. Although the wording was considered calm, the joy and fanaticism in his words couldn't be concealed. These people really did know of the existence of the myriad dragon body and were very interested in it. After obtaining Chinyu's second confirmation, the Dark Parliament immediately moved. 2 senators, Jasmine and Lone Mountain, personally came to Mid-Morning City. Senior Lin closely monitored Qin Yu's movements. But when the Dark Parliament was operating like a giant machine, even with the strength he controlled, he still couldn't completely block off their contact with Qin Yu. He didn't know what sort of price the Dark Parliament had paid, but Qin Yu soon welcomed the two senators in his lakeside courtyard. Of course, these were only puppets they controlled. Every senator of the Dark Parliament was incomparably mysterious. Even the senators didn't know each other's true identities. Qin Yu's eyes swept over the medium-built man in front of him and the yellow-haired female cultivator beside him. Through the connection between the senators, he could directly determine their identities. He gestured with his hand. "Senator Jasmine, Senator Lone Mountain, please sit." Jasmine said, "Senator Morningstar, the Dark Parliament attaches great importance to the news you sent back. Today, I will confirm with you one last time whether or not this matter is true." Qin Yu nodded. "It is absolutely true. I can guarantee this." "Good." Senator Lone Mountain revealed a smile. "Senator Morningstar, if everything goes smoothly, I will owe you a great honor." Qin Yu revealed a puzzled expression. Jasmine thought for a moment. She said, "Senator Lone Mountain doesn't have much time left to live, but the Master of Sky Declaring Pavilion controls the legendary Myriad Dragon Body. As long as the Dark Parliament obtains it, they can offer it to the Darkness Altar and exchange it for a gift. And that lifespan just happens to belong to one of the gifts that the Darkness Altar gives." Qin Yu revealed a look of understanding. He cupped his hands together and said, "If so, then I must congratulate Senator Lone Mountain in advance. You will be able to fulfill your wish." Lone Mountain smiled. "It is all thanks to Senator Morningstar's information. If the Dark Parliament attacked with all their might, their chances of success would be extremely high. Even so, he didn't dare to be careless. Although the Sky Declaring Pavilion Master rarely took action in front of others, according to the intelligence the Dark Parliament controlled, he was a true extreme master. Moreover, he also controlled the infinitely powerful Myriad Dragon Body that was rumored to be able to destroy the heavens and earth. It was like pulling a tooth from a tiger's mouth. Senator Morningstar, our time is limited, so I won't bother with pleasantries. Please tell us everything you know truthfully." Qin Yu nodded. "All right." He didn't conceal anything. He told them everything about how the Sky Declaring Pavilion Master had asked him to treat the Myriad Dragon Body. Qin Yu didn't conceal anything, nor did it involve any secrets. Moreover, with the Dark Parliament's methods, if they were determined to investigate this matter, they would likely discover any discrepancies in Qin Yu's words. That wouldn't be good. After listening to Qin Yu, Jasmine revealed a relaxed expression. She glanced at Lone Mountain and said, "Here, I represent the senators of the Dark Parliament to express our apologies to Senator Morningstar. We have already investigated the matter you spoke of just now. The reason for this is because Senator Morningstar hasn't joined the Dark Parliament for long, so we inevitably have some scruples. But this time, Senator Morningstar has used his actions to prove himself. The Dark Parliament guarantees that similar matters will not occur again." Qin Yu frowned, a gloomy look in his eyes. "I can understand, but I hope that this will be the last time." Lone Mountain laughed. "I knew that Senator Morningstar wouldn't haggle over such minor matters. You and I still have important matters to attend to." His eyes brightened, and he eagerly said, "Sky Declaring Pavilion Master has asked Senator Morningstar to treat the Myriad Dragon Body. This is simply perfect. I believe that Senator Morningstar has a way to restrict the freedom of the Myriad Dragon Body." Qin Yu thought for a moment and slowly nodded. "I can give it a try." Lone Mountain and Jasmine left with satisfaction. Since they had already determined the truth of the matter, if the Dark Parliament wanted to do something, they would have to make preparations early. Dorlice flashed out. She placed her hands on her hips, a smug look on her face. "How about it? Am I right?" Qin Yu nodded. "Yes. Did I help you a great deal?" Qin Yu glanced at her, lost in thought. Dorlice anxiously said, Yes means yes, no means no. Qin Yu, speak with your conscience. Why are you acting so deep? Qin Yu took a deep breath. That's right, you helped me a great deal. Stop, that's enough. I don't want to know what happens next. Dorlice rubbed her hands together. I've helped you so much. So how can I not show my sincerity? I can see that Sky Declaring Pavilion is rich and overbearing, so they have plenty of confidence. They can definitely throw out another wave of blood. Qin Yu's lips twitched. Didn't you see the expression on Bien Chongli's face from the Internal Affairs Division? If he opens his mouth again, I'm afraid his brain vessels will explode. It's fine if we just want money, but why do we have to harm someone's life? I haven't even obtained a single piece of steel until now. All I see is someone making a fortune. And now you are telling me to cherish my life? I only want my share. Who cares if his brain vessels explode or not? Dorlice glared at him. Or, do you want to make up for my share? Qin Yu frowned. He slowly said, I think Director Bien should be able to persist for a bit longer. Dorlice sneered. Is it that fun to be mischievous? Since you've agreed, hurry up and take action. The list is here. As she spoke, she threw out a jade slip. Qin Yu took it and probed it with his divine sense. His lips twitched. This woman Dorlice, it turns out her appetite was actually so good. I can help you ask for it, but I can't give it to you now. At the very least, I have to wait until this matter is over and I obtain the myriad dragon body. Dorlice screamed, Qin Yu, are you playing with me? Do you think that because I care about you that I don't dare to do anything to you? What about the most basic trust between people? She nearly went crazy with anger. This fellow was actually able to display his distrust of her in such a vivid and incisive manner. There was no one else like him. Qin Yu had no expression. You can choose to receive the goods in the future, or I will owe you another favor. But let me remind you that once you owe too many favors, it will rapidly depreciate in value. Dorlice clenched her teeth. Qin Yu, you are ruthless. Remember this for me. She turned and walked away. As she was about to leave the living room, she stopped. I will choose the future harvest, but you must give me interest. Double the amount on the list. Qin Yu smiled. A wise choice. You definitely won't regret it. As he watched her leave, he looked down at the jade slip in his hand. He rubbed his chin. Bien Chongli wouldn't really have his brain vessels explode, right? 2 hours after Qin Yu thought of this, the thin and protruding Bien Chongli collapsed behind the workbench. His body twitched and blood flowed from his head. His teeth were clenched, and one could faintly hear his angry roars as he faintly fainted. You have gone too far, surname Ning. You have gone too far. After managing Mid-Morning City's Internal Affairs Division for so many years, Bien Chongli had earned quite a bit of wealth. But this time, Sky Declaring Pavilion had been shaken to the core. They had mobilized resources to exchange for treasures from the outside world, and in order to protect themselves, he had to spit out most of what he had spent. Now that something like this had happened, all of his 100 years of hard work and caution had become nothing but bubbles. It would be strange if he didn't faint. By the time old Lin rushed over, Bien Chongli had already been carried away for treatment. He grasped the jade slip in Bien Chongli's hand and slowly took back his divine sense. Give it to him, give it all to him. Every single word in this sentence emitted a steaming cold air. Surname Ning. Even if your greed could contain the entire world, in the end you will still end up empty-handed. Chapter 840. When Ning Qin finally left, Bien Chongli, who had been crying tears of joy on the sickbed, suddenly fainted because of the violent fluctuations in his mind. This startled his wives and concubines into crying again and again. They rushed up and massaged him, allowing him to slowly recover. Master, you absolutely cannot have anything happen to you. Otherwise, what are we to do? The wife gripped her handkerchief, her eyes red and swollen like peaches. Bien, Chongli gasped for breath as he laughed. Don't cry. As long as that surname Ning leaves, my illness will be mostly gone. In another 10 years or so, our Bien family's great family business will be recovered. Although he said this, Bien Chongli still felt heartache as he thought of his greatly reduced wealth. His cheeks twitched. He would never forget that surname Ning's great enmity. But luckily, once Ning Qin left, it was likely he wouldn't return. Although it was a bit regretful that he wouldn't be able to personally take revenge. Thinking about his opponent's strength, this was undoubtedly the best result. Otherwise, if he was given a chance to attack, it would be hard to say who would live and who would die. As Bien Chongli was incomparably excited, the vanished Qinyu was riding Sky Declaring Pavilion's flying ship, heading toward some unknown destination deep within the Yuan mountain range. On the flying ship were Old Lin, Fengqing, Dorlis, and Yundai. There were also a number of guards, their eyes surging with a sharp light and their faces filled with the appearance of an elite. The flying ship was fast and didn't stop midway at all. It seemed that the true master of Sky Declaring Pavilion was already impatient. Sitting by the window, Qin Yu looked down at the boundless sea of clouds. Between the mountain ranges, fog gathered and tumbled like raging waves. Qin Yu's expression was calm and there were no waves in his eyes. Occasionally he would take out 1 or 2 green pills and swallow them with tea. This pill was slightly smaller than the knuckle of his pinky finger. It was a deep green color and didn't emit the least bit of smell. As Qin Yu's lips moved up and down, in the silence, one could faintly hear the sound of chewing. Dorlis turned her head and glanced. She glanced again and then glanced again. Finally, she couldn't hold back any longer. She stood up and walked forwards, a curious expression on her face. Qin Yu, what are you eating? It looks so delicious, can you? I can't. Qin Yu interrupted her. Dorlis nearly choked on her breath. Her complexion changed on the spot. She looked at Qin Yu with a sad and aggrieved expression. You've changed. You treated me so well when you needed her, and even hugged me so intimately. But when you were done with her, you immediately turned your back on me. Doesn't your conscience hurt? Yundai pricked up her ears to listen. Her eyes couldn't help but widen. She looked at Dorlis and then at Qin Yu, her face filled with shock. It was as if she was saying, how could you do this? Qin Yu rubbed his eyebrows. First of all, there is nothing between the two of us, so don't speak too ambiguously with me. Second of all, this thing is mine. Whether I give it to you or not is up to me. He looked up at Dorlis. Now I will repeat myself. I will not give it to you. You, Dorlis, nose turned crooked. That damn Qin Yu, you bastard son of a bitch and a watermelon egg. Just you wait for me. In the little ledger in his heart, he made another note. Moreover, it was already densely packed with Qin Yu's countless crimes. If there really came a day when Dorlis rose to power in the future, his fate would be miserable. There was nothing more to say about this. Endure it, endure it. He had already recorded so many bills he couldn't break them now. It wasn't time to settle accounts yet. Dorlis's expression turned cold, without the slightest hint of emotion. Qin Yu, you still owe me several favors, and there is also a pile of items on that list. I will give you a chance to erase all of this. She lifted a hand and pointed. Give me 100 similar green pills, and the debt between us will be written off. Now that I think about it, I haven't taken advantage of you in this matter. To be more precise, you have saved yourself a great deal of trouble. Qin Yu hesitated for 2 seconds. Really? Dorlis nodded. Of course. I have always kept my word. Qin Yu said, deal. He stood up. Wait a moment, I will go get it for you. Remember your promise. After this transaction, we are even. Dorlis was expressionless, but she sneered inwardly. Qin Yu, no matter how cunning you are, you still want to dig your way into this old lady's trap. She didn't know what the green pills were, but there was no mistaking their alluring scent. As long as she could obtain 100 of them, the strength of her projection would greatly increase. At that time, she would be able to do many things. The first thing was to teach Qin Yu a lesson. She would have him remember that women weren't to be provoked. Women were very vengeful. A moment later, Qin Yu returned. He placed a jade bottle on the table. There are 100 pills inside. You can count them. Dorlice really began to count. 1, 2, 3. In truth, when Qin Yu agreed so easily, she still felt a bit uncertain. 100 pills, that was the correct number. She carefully put it away. Dorlice took one and tossed it into her mouth. She chewed on it a few times and her complexion darkened. Qin Yu, you dare to play with me? This pill isn't right. The color was the same and the aura was similar, but after she ate it, it didn't have any effect at all. It was like ordinary candy. Dorlice felt like her lungs were about to explode. She originally thought that although Qin Yu was a bit loathsome, he still had a basic level of sincerity. But now his only advantage had been completely shattered. He had actually used something like this to fool her. This surnamed Qin wanted to light a sky lantern, right? This time, she really couldn't endure it. Qin Yu frowned. What's wrong? Dorlice clenched her teeth. Don't play dumb with me. The pills you ate just now weren't the ones in my hand. Qin Yu lightly said, I swear that the pills in your hand were refined together with the ones I ate just now. If there is even half a lie in my words, then let my stomach rot and I will die a horrible death. Dorlice's aura stagnated. At her level, she certainly knew that things like oaths couldn't be spoken carelessly. Once spoken, karma would follow and there would eventually be a day when she would be haunted by it. If Qin Yu dared to swear, could it be true? She looked at the jade bottle in her hand. As she thought about how she had used a pile of favors and treasures to exchange for 100 candy beans, her heart was in chaos. No, wait a moment. If Qin Yu said they were refined together, then there was a great deal of information hidden within. Dorlice's eyes instantly turned sharp. She stared straight at Qin Yu. Qin Yu, do you dare to swear that the materials and process used to refine these pills are all the same? The ones you were eating just now? Qin Yu looked at her, a heavy expression on his face that said, You don't trust me? He slowly nodded. That's right, I dare to swear. Then, if you don't have any more questions, I will go back and rest. This is the way of the world. Where did the most basic trust between people go? Dorlice was thoroughly bewildered. It was actually true, but it clearly shouldn't be like this. Just where did the problem go? Yundai watched from the sidelines. Although she didn't know what trick her teacher was playing, it was clear that the big-breasted Dorlice had suffered a great loss this time. As she thought, her figure was too tyrannical. In the eyes of her teacher, this sort of thing wasn't worth mentioning at all. She gloatingly smiled and turned to leave. This woman was in a bad mood right now, so she didn't want to stay and be the punching bag. After closing the door, Qin Yu couldn't help but laugh. This woman, Dorlice, had been completely played over by him. She was indeed smart, but since Qin Yu dared to swear an oath, he certainly wasn't afraid of violating it. Those green pills were indeed refined from the same pill furnace, the same materials, and the same process. Even the batches of pills could be said to be from the same furnace. However, it was in this state that everything was exactly the same, but the pills refined were completely different. The appearance and the smell that ordinary people couldn't touch were completely the same, but the effects were worlds apart. What Qin Yu ate was the real deal, and what Dorlice obtained were sugar pills. Of course, calling them sugar pills was too much of an injustice. After all, the materials themselves were incomparably precious. In order to refine them, all of the materials he obtained from Sky Declaring Pavilion had been used up. As for the pill refining formula, it had appeared in his mind after he fused with the jade egg. It just so happened that he could use it now. Dorlice's nose was quite useful. Otherwise, Qin Yu wouldn't have eaten the pills in front of her. Qin Yu rubbed his nose. It seemed that he had exposed his impure intentions from the start. He didn't care about it anymore. In any case, the problem had already been solved. Otherwise, if he left a bunch of favors for Doralice, who knew what she would come up with next? As Doralice's thoughts were in chaos and Chinyu was feeling refreshed. To the east of the Upper Prime mountain range, in the hinterland of the eastern Great Plains, a team from Dragon City was flying towards them. Zhou sat in the carriage, the dragon mark between her eyebrows flashing. Her face was dignified, as beautiful as a goddess descending from the heavens. One couldn't help but feel awe towards her, not daring to look straight at her. Around the carriage, with the Shadow Clan patriarch at the lead, all of the elites were dispatched. They formed a team of around 300 people. Every Shadow Clan cultivator had a solemn expression. Deep in their eyes, there was an irrepressible excitement. After waiting for countless years, this day had finally arrived. As long as the Dragon Sovereign could be resurrected, the Shadow Clan could soar into the heavens. Thinking of this, the Shadow Clan patriarch's eyes fell on the magnificent and dignified carriage. His eyes flashed for a moment before finally turning into indifference. For the sake of his clan, he would eventually have to pay a price. But as long as he could help the Dragon Sovereign resurrect, any price was worth it. Zhou Li didn't know that the lofty and aloof her, the most respected person in the entire Shadow Clan, had been placed on the list of sacrifices, and this list was personally passed down by the Dragon Sovereign that the Shadow Clan believed in. She also didn't know that several days from now, she would see that person once more, a person she never wanted to mention again, a person she would never be able to forget. The matters of the world were like this. They would never proceed according to the will of some people. No matter how meticulous the arrangements were, there was always a chance of accidents occurring. For instance, the ancient wanted to take back the myriad dragon body, but didn't know that they had been waiting for this for a long time. For instance, the master of Sky Declaring Pavilion thought that he could control Chinyu, but this was only a trap. For instance, the Dark Parliament also wanted the myriad dragon body, but didn't know that this was only Chinyu's arrangement to take advantage of the chaos. Or, for instance, the Shadow Clan of Dragon City's invasion, which would inevitably disrupt Chinyu's plans and cause the situation to become even more chaotic. But this was the real world. You never knew what would happen in the next moment, and it was impossible to control everything. The only thing that could be foreseen was that the struggle for the myriad dragon body would set off a great storm as more and more people joined in. As for who would be the ultimate winner, everyone would have to wait and see. 3 days later, Sky Declaring Pavilion's flying ship landed in a thick fog deep within the High Prime mountain range. The surrounding area was vast and boundless, and visibility was extremely limited. Moreover, it was unknown whether it was naturally like this or if someone had changed it later on, but the fog had an extremely strong isolating ability. Chinyu walked down the stairs of the flying ship. As he looked around, he subconsciously frowned. Even with his current eyesight, he could only see through the surface of the fog. Looking deeper, there was nothing but chaos. This place was truly strange. Old Lin was the last to disembark. When he landed on the ground, he finally let out a sigh of relief. On the way here, he had been worried that Chinyu would stir up some trouble, but luckily everything went smoothly. After entering this fog, he had arrived at his master's domain, and everything was under his control. But he didn't reveal any of this on the surface. He looked at Feng Qing and cupped his hands together. "Mr. Ningqin, you must be tired from the journey. Please follow me and rest for a while. Once you are fully recovered, you can come with me to see Master." Chinyu nodded. All right. Since he had come here, he would listen to the arrangements. Before seeing the myriad dragon body, Chinyu would maintain absolute silence. He followed Old Lin forwards. Although the fog was thick and isolated his divine sense, he seemed to be very familiar with this place. After walking for a while, they arrived at a courtyard hidden in the fog. Old Lin stopped. He smiled and said, "We will rest here today. Tomorrow I will come again to invite Mr. Ningqin." He turned and bowed. "Master misses you very much. Please come with me to see him first." Feng Qing stiffened. She subconsciously looked at Qin Yu and then stopped. Her heart was filled with panic. She took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Okay, hold on." Qin Yu suddenly said, "If old Lin leaves, there will only be the three of us left. If there is anything we need, I really don't know what to do." He looked at her, his expression calm. "How about we have Miss Feng Qing stay here so she can accompany us? What does old Lin think?" Old Lin furrowed his eyebrows. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly stopped. He looked deeply at Qin Yu and said, "Since Mr. Ning Qin has spoken, then we will do as you say. Miss will stay here and come with Mr. tomorrow." He cupped his hands together and left. Feng Qing let out a long breath. Her legs buckled and she nearly fell to the ground. She didn't dare to say anything, only looking at him with gratitude in her eyes, since he had already agreed to protect Feng Qing as much as possible. Qin Yu didn't want to go back on his word as long as it was within his ability. He nodded at her and looked up. Then he walked towards the courtyard. "Let's go. Let's settle down first." Just as they were about to arrive, they were suddenly arranged to stay for the night. Compared to the fact that they had been constantly rushing all the way here, it was clearly a bit strange. Chapter 841. Senior Lin silently walked forwards in the fog. His expression was respectful, and there was awe and fear in his eyes. This was his master's domain. Walking here was like facing his master. He could sense everything. After a moment, Senior Lin stopped. In front of him was a giant stone. What was strange was that for 100 feet around this stone, there seemed to be an invisible strength spreading out, preventing any fog from approaching. Senior Lin bowed. "Master, this old servant reports to you. The guest has arrived." A fog was suddenly sucked in, falling in front of him and turning into a line of text. Senior Lin read it over and respectfully said, "Yes, master. Everything has been done according to your orders." The fog changed again, turning into new words. After Senior Lin read it, he said, "This old servant has started the awakening process. The death guards are waking up one after another." The fog changed again. Senior Lin revealed a dignified expression. This time he didn't say anything and only nodded. Following that, the fog changed several more times. Senior Lin nodded and shook his head, but he didn't say a single word. Finally, the fog scattered, returning to the surroundings and vanishing from sight. Senior Lin bowed. He took several steps back before turning and leaving, his figure soon vanishing into the fog. In an incomparably vast and spotless palace, a man steadily arrived in front of the door. He lifted a hand, and with a loud rumbling sound, the towering stone door slowly opened a gap. Bang! A cruel aura suddenly erupted from behind the stone door, as if it had been waiting for a long time. The moment the door opened, it would explode forth. A blood-red claw reached out, grabbing at the man as if it wanted to pull him into the world behind the stone door. But all of this seemed to be within the man's expectations. His shoulders were as steady as mountains, and he suddenly stepped backwards. The moment he dodged the strongest blood-red claw, the man finally attacked. He lifted a hand and pressed forward. The air instantly froze and froze. The claw struck the air, emitting the sound of metal colliding. With loud kacha-kacha, tiny black cracks appeared before vanishing without a trace. It was as if there were invisible rules covering the space where this palace was located, not allowing any destructive actions to occur. The collision stirred up gales in the air, causing the man's long hair and robes to flutter in the wind. He was sent flying 1,000 feet away like a falling leaf, his eyes calm and tranquil. An angry roar came from behind the stone door. "Damn it! How can you always detect me in advance?" The man said indifferently, "Although I don't like it either, I still have to remind you that even if we split into two completely new bodies, there is still a trace of connection that cannot be severed." Humph! The person behind the stone door coldly snorted. "One day I will devour you." The man said, "Perhaps that day really will come, but before that, you and I should first get through this obstacle before us." After a slight pause, his expression turned serious. "I have bad news for you. Master and his little friend have arrived, but there is another guest who is not part of the plan. I will now share a portion of my perception of the outside world with you. Don't try to do anything, lest you waste our little time. You will naturally understand." He raised his hand and pointed a finger at the void. There was silence behind the stone door, followed by a low roar. "The scent of West Hill. Who is she?" The man said, "If I'm not wrong, she is called Dorlice. She believes in the ruler of the West Hill and is a god under the supreme Tao monarch." "That's right. Just as you think. She is a true divinity. So, even if what appears here is only a projection of her, this projection still contains incomparably precious divine Tao rules. Even if we destroy Master and you and I obtain true freedom, we both know that this will at most allow us to rid ourselves of our fear of Master and live openly in this world. But our incomplete foundation has not been resolved." The voice behind the stone door said, "You want to seize the strength of this divinity projection." The man said, "You and I have yet to reach the realm of divinity, so it is impossible for us to speculate. But the strength of that realm is without a doubt. With a thought, the circulation of the rules might be an opportunity." The man behind the stone door was silent for several breaths of time. "Good." The man revealed a smile for the first time. "Then I wish us a happy cooperation in advance. This courtyard wasn't simple at all. Every brick and tile had a deep meaning. As it quietly stood in the fog, it seemed as if it had fused together with the fog." Qin Yu lowered his head, concealing the dark golden light that appeared deep in his eyes. After carefully looking for a moment, he finally discovered something. So it was like this. He knew that since they had arrived, there had to be another reason for them to suddenly rest here for a day. Qin Yu restrained the strange look in his eyes and turned around. "I've rested a lot on the way here, so I don't feel tired. If everyone isn't tired, then let's play some cards together. Just consider it a way to pass the time." Yun Dai always believed that her teacher was the most diligent person in the world. For him to suggest playing cards to pass the time, there had to be some other goal. She smiled and said, "All right, I recommend playing mahjong. I don't know which wise sage invented it, but ever since I learned it, I have been addicted to it." Feng Qing forced out a smile. "Since Mr. Ning Qin is interested, then I will accompany you." Dorlice turned and walked away. "Then what are you all waiting for?" After taking a few steps, she suddenly turned around with a smug smile on her face. "I forgot to tell you, my luck has always been frighteningly good when it comes to cards. Very few people can last more than 2 hours when playing cards with me." Looking at her appearance, she was filled with confidence. The game began. Qin Yu hadn't played mahjong before. Although Dorlice said she was amazing, the truth was that she was still a novice. But for a cultivator, being proficient in playing a card was easy. Yun Dai took the first win. Feng Qing took the second place. Qin Yu took the third place. Then there was no then. As the white jade cards fell onto the table, they constantly emitted loud popping sounds. Dorelice's originally calm and composed expression gradually turned gloomy. Yun Dai, Feng Qing, Qin Yu, Yun Dai, Feng Qing, Qin Yu. It was like a closed loop had been opened. Before the game even began, the arrogant Dorlice had become the only loser. She had lost all the spirit stones she had taken out at the start. Qin Yu lent her a sum and then lost it all. Then he lent her a second sum, a third sum, a fourth sum. Finally, when she borrowed the fifth sum of spirit stones, the mahjong tiles in Dorelice's hands finally couldn't withstand the heroic sacrifice and shattered into a pile of powder. Dorlice casually clapped her hands and stood up. "My luck isn't too good today. I'll play another day. I'm going to rest." Qin Yu lightly said, "Don't forget the spirit stones you owe me." Dorley staggered. She didn't look back. I know. She clenched her teeth and left. Yun Dai stuck out her tongue and gently gasped for breath. Ah, we really didn't do it on purpose. Who told her luck to be so bad that she didn't even win a single game? She stifled a laugh and winked. Did you notice that Dorellis's expression just now was really wonderful? She was simply acting out a play. Feng Qing's mood was much better. She said, let's not talk about it. It's a good thing that she left midway. Otherwise, if we continued to play, I'm afraid it wouldn't just be the mahjong tiles that would break, but all of us would suffer a calamity. In all honesty, when she saw that the situation was far from good, she had already deliberately made a mistake. But Qin Yu had intercepted her 5 times. There really wasn't anything she could do. Qin Yu put down the mahjong tiles and stood up. You two stay here and don't go back to your rooms. Just talk and remember not to cultivate. Yun Dai and Feng Qing's complexions turned solemn and they nodded. Indeed, there was a reason for arranging this mahjong game. Qin, you looked towards the direction that Dorlis left in. After a moment of hesitation, he suppressed this thought. With this woman's level, it wouldn't be easy to scheme against her. He shouldn't need to do much. For hours later, Qin Yu suddenly opened his eyes. In the next moment, a violent fluctuation of strength erupted not too far away. It was Dorlis. Qin Yu frowned. Without hesitation, he flicked his sleeves and grabbed Yun Dai and Feng Qing. Then he held away. The fog in front of him tumbled like waves, forcefully pushing away 1,000 feet of empty space. Dorlis stood there, her face icy cold. Sensing the approaching aura, she turned her head. Her eyes were cold and indifferent, causing Yun Dai and Feng Qing's hearts to tremble. This gaze was too terrifying. Seeing Qin Yu and the others, Dorellis's expression softened. She frowned and said, I had a dream just now. She thought for a moment and then said, Strange. I've already forgotten what happened in that dream. Qin, you didn't know whether she was telling the truth or not. He calmly said, Just because of a dream. Did you need to cause such a great commotion? Everywhere he looked was a mess. The houses had been destroyed, and even the surrounding courtyards looked as if they had encountered a level 12 hurricane. The ground was torn apart, and the scene was too horrible to bear. Dorlis curled her lips. It's this place that wasn't built sturdily. Do you want to blame me for being too strong? Whoosh! There was the sound of breaking air. Several breaths of time later, Elder Lin landed. As his eyes swept over the destroyed courtyard, he was clearly stunned for a second. A gloomy expression appeared on his face. Mr. Ning Qin, what happened? This courtyard is the Pavilion Master's courtyard. Without a reasonable explanation, it will be hard for me to explain myself. Qin Yu pointed a finger. Ask her about this. I still need to rest, so I'll bid my farewells first. He cupped his hands together and left. Just as Yun Dai took several steps, she heard Qin Yu say, Don't follow me. Go back to your rooms and rest. With Dorlis messing around like this courtyard could be considered ruined. Yun Dai's heart calmed down. She looked at Feng Qing and said, Miss Feng Qing, there are some matters I need to attend to. Can I speak with you in private? Feng Qing said, All right. She nodded to Elder Lin and walked away. In the blink of an eye, the scene fell silent. Dorlis restrained her arrogance. With an innocent expression, she said, I had a nightmare just now, and I thought I would never wake up again. If the commotion was a little too big, I believe that an almighty being like Sky declaring Pavilion Master, who sits on endless wealth, wouldn't mind, right? All right, it's getting late. There are still important matters to attend to tomorrow, so I won't keep you here to chat. Let's meet tomorrow. She turned and left. Elder Lin's complexion paled, and his eyes nearly spat out flames. He swept his eyes around the ruined courtyard, his heart dripping blood. This courtyard was something he had overseen in the past for his master. He had personally spent a great deal of effort to build it, so he was well aware of the astonishing costs involved. Today it had been destroyed by Dorlice. If he wanted to restore it to its perfect state, it would be extremely difficult. To put it simply, it was basically ruined. Elder Lin took a deep breath, barely suppressing his tumbling emotions. Did his master do something in secret? It shouldn't be. After all, at this time, any unnecessary actions could cause unnecessary misunderstandings. Although Ning Qin and the others had arrived here, and their fate was in his master's hands, with his calm and meticulous temperament, he shouldn't have been so careless before the curtains were drawn. Just what had gone wrong. Schwa! In a quiet room surrounded by light and surrounded by darkness, a man opened his eyes and coughed several times. Hidden in the darkness, his face was a bit pale, but he revealed a faint smile. He had finally determined that this was a true divine projection. Moreover, the strength contained within this projection was far greater than he had imagined. Even though the contact from before had been rudely interrupted, he'd already seen the extremely beautiful and gorgeous divine Tao law fragment that was revolving in the depths of the projection. It was like a revolving nebula that caused one's mind to be unable to help but be immersed within it. Chapter 842. It was unknown whether or not old Lin hadn't left after Dorlice destroyed the house. The next day, he knocked on Qin Yu's door and calmly cupped his hands across his chest. Mr. Ning Qin, the master, is waiting. Please follow me. Just as his voice fell, there was the sound of footsteps behind him. Dorlice said, I've long heard that Sky Declaring Pavilion Master is a first-class expert of this world. I wonder if I might have the honor of going with you to pay my respects? Old Lin turned around. He frowned for a moment before composing himself. Mr. Ning Qin's friend, I believe the master will be happy to see you. Dorlice clapped her hands and smiled. Then that's good. I will personally apologize to the pavilion master for what happened yesterday. Old Lin. Feng Qin knew that she couldn't avoid this. Since this was the case, following by Qin Yu's side was the best choice. She stepped forwards and said, I will go see teacher today. Yundai suddenly said, Teacher, although this disciple is slow, I also wish to stay by your side and increase my knowledge and experience. Thus, I also wish to go with you. Qin Yu shook his head. Your cultivation is too weak, so you won't be able to help much. Just stay here. Yundai had a pleading look in her eyes. Teacher, please let this disciple go with me. If you all leave, I will be afraid to stay here by myself. Qin Yu's thoughts stirred. Although the following matters would be dangerous, it wasn't necessarily a good thing for Yundai to stay here alone. After hesitating for several breaths of time, he said, Then remember, you must listen to me. You cannot act recklessly. Yundai quickly nodded. Qin Yu looked up. Old Lin, what do you think? Old Lin said, Since I am Mr. Ning's disciple, I can follow you. It wouldn't be good to make the master wait for too long, so let's go. They silently left the courtyard. The surrounding fog was so thick that it was difficult to determine their direction. But, based on their feeling, they continued deeper into the high prime mountain range. The fog became increasingly thick, and it gradually became difficult to see what was beneath their feet. Luckily, the ground had been leveled, so they wouldn't trip over it. Suddenly, the fog in front of them cleared, and a giant stone appeared in front of them. It was the size of a dozen people holding hands, and was blue all over. All of the fog was repelled away, making it difficult to approach 100 feet around it. Qin Yu's eyes fell on the boulder. His eyes flashed for a moment before he restrained himself. Before he could speak, Dorlice already asked, Old Lin, are you going to tell us that this is the pavilion master of Sky Declaring Pavilion? Before he could even catch his breath, Senior Lin stuffily coughed and his complexion darkened. Miss Dorlice, please be careful with your words. Of course this stone isn't my master. Ignoring her, Elder Lin took a few steps forward. His hands quickly formed seals, and he pointed at the boulder. Open! Without a sound, the boulder moved to the side, revealing a black hole in the ground. It was dark, and no one knew where it led to. Mr. Ning Qin, Because of certain reasons, my master's residence is a bit strange. Please follow me." After he finished speaking, he took the lead and stepped into it. His figure was swallowed by the darkness, and the clear sound of footsteps could be heard from within, as if he had carved out a stone staircase that led to the bottom. Qin Yu paused for a moment. Then he walked up to the black hole and entered it. His vision instantly darkened, but in the next moment his vision actually recovered. It was as if the darkness was only relative to the outside world. After entering, he wouldn't be affected at all, and there really were stone steps beneath his feet. His gaze swept across the surroundings. This passageway was extremely clean. In fact, it could even be said to be spotless. But even so, he could still sense the aura of time it emitted. Presumably, this passageway that led underground had existed for countless years. The sound of footsteps rang out from behind him. Dorlice, Yundai, and Fengqing walked in one after another. Within the long stone staircase, everyone's footsteps rose and fell. Senior Lin's voice sounded out in front of them. "My master has placed a supernatural ability on this tunnel, so you can only walk in. You cannot use your cultivation. I ask that you all keep this in mind to avoid any misunderstandings." Qin Yu suddenly said, "If I may be so bold as to ask, why does the pavilion master live here? Isn't it very troublesome to deal with all sorts of matters here?" Senior Lin said, "As for the specific reason, only the master knows. Perhaps Mr. Ningqin can personally confirm it with the master in the near future." Qin Yu nodded, no longer speaking. At this time, the ancient's voice echoed in Qin Yu's mind. "No wonder I haven't been able to find him all these years." So he found such a place to hide. Qin Yu relaxed. He quickly said, "My lord, so you already came in. I was worried that there would be something wrong with this strange place." The ancient said, "Don't worry. Everything is under my control. The myriad dragon body won't be able to cause any trouble." At this time, they reached the end of the stone steps. The ancient said, "Just do as he says. Leave everything else to me." Senior Lin turned and said, "Mr. Ningqin, we've arrived. This is where my master lives." At the end of the stone steps was a circular building. Like the tunnel, it was filled with the aura of time. No, it was more accurate to say that the aura of time in this circular hall was much richer, as if it had existed for many, many years before someone opened up a stone tunnel to reach here. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the circular hall, one could see a massive space of nothingness outside. It was a bleak and pale gray, and one couldn't even feel the passage of time. In the depths of this void floated a large expanse of grand palaces. They were tall and majestic, and even though they were far away, one could still clearly feel the majestic aura they emitted, causing one to instinctively feel reverence from the bottom of one's heart. For a time, the circular hall fell silent, as if everyone were shaken by the scene in front of them. After all, if they didn't see it with their own eyes, no one would have imagined that there was an independent space hidden deep underground with such a massive palace floating within. The silence was broken. A young man's gentle voice spread into everyone's ears. "Welcome to the master's residence. I am Flowing Cloud, and I am responsible for leading you into the main hall." Perhaps because the scene in front of them was far too astonishing, but no one noticed the young man's existence until he spoke. Or it could be said that this person's sense of existence was far too low, so low that as long as he didn't speak, everyone would subconsciously forget him. Old Lin said, "This is the master's attendant. Following this, he will be the one to lead everyone forwards. I can only accompany you here." Flowing Cloud faced everyone's gazes. His expression was calm and relaxed. He faintly smiled and said, "Then let us set off." With a flick of his sleeves, there was a flash of light. A wooden boat appeared outside the circular hall, floating in the air. Flowing Cloud's figure flickered. He landed on the wooden boat and gestured with his hand. "Everyone, please." Qin Yu glanced at him. Although his expression didn't change, his heart was tense. If anything were to go wrong, he would immediately erupt with his full strength. This was because he never imagined that the myriad dragon body would appear in front of him in such a straightforward manner. Although the ancient didn't remind him of the young man's identity, Qin Yu believed that his senses weren't wrong. Hidden beneath this young man's ordinary appearance was a terrifying strength that could shatter the heavens and crack the earth. If someone told him that this young man didn't possess the myriad dragon body, Qin Yu wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. What the hell, without any warning, he had come face to face with a big boss. Qin Yu glanced behind him. Feng Qing had a perfectly puzzled expression on her face. He knew that she was reminding him that this person hadn't been by Sky declaring Pavilion Master's side. This basically confirmed his suspicions. He quietly swept his eyes over Leilise. This woman's expression was normal, and she looked around with interest. But Qin Yu keenly discovered that she was looking at the front of the wooden boat a bit more than usual. It seemed that she had also sensed something. But this was even better. It would save him the trouble of thinking about it. The wooden boat wasn't large. With 5 people standing on it, it felt a bit crowded. In addition, it was narrow, giving off a feeling as if a gust of wind would cause it to topple over. After leaving the circular hall, they were surrounded by that dark gray nothingness. Although it was clearly empty, it left one feeling incomparably fearful. It was as if there was some great horror hidden in this nothingness. If one were to accidentally fall into it, they would be swallowed up for all eternity, never to escape. Flowing Cloud suddenly said. He always smiled before speaking, his expression calm and relaxed. Everyone be careful. Don't let your body leave the range of the wooden boat, otherwise there might be some troubles. In particular, the young miss with the best figure. Even if you are curious, it is best not to try. Dorlise beamed with joy. Little brother, you are quite an honest person. She had an expression as if she had just picked up some money and was extremely smug. Flowing Cloud didn't feel disgusted at all. Instead, his smile became even brighter. As Miss said, I am a very honest person. I am only speaking the truth. Dorlise swept her eyes over Qin Yu. Although she didn't speak, her meaning was clear. Do you see this? This old lady is so charming, but your eyes are blind and you can't see it. You don't have the least bit of appreciation. At this time, how could Qin Yu be in the mood to think about such things? He simply closed his eyes and pretended not to see anything. But even though he closed his eyes, his perception of his surroundings had risen to the highest level. In the circular hall, Senior Lin watched the wooden boat depart. A dignified expression gradually appeared on his face. Although his master had always been meticulous in his actions, his plan this time was too great. No one could guarantee whether or not he would succeed. But he would do his utmost to protect his master. Even if he had to pay the price with his life, he wouldn't hesitate. Turning around, Senior Lin strode towards the wall of the circular hall. His feet didn't stop. When his figure touched the stone wall, he melted into it like a stone. The wooden boat finally reached the shore, rescuing Yundai and Feng Qing from their torment. As they crossed the void just now, Flowing Cloud and Dorlise had been quietly flattering them and enjoying themselves without batting an eyelid. It was so annoying that their heads hurt. We've arrived. Everyone, please. Flowing Cloud was the first to step onto the edge of the palace, a dignified expression on his face. After Qin Yu and the others arrived, he flicked his sleeves and put away the wooden boat. Then he gestured with his hand and turned to lead the way. When they were in the circular hall, they could see from afar that this palace was incomparably grand. But only by truly standing inside could they truly feel its majesty. As the several people stood inside, they instinctively felt something. It was like they were grains of sand, as if they were standing amongst endless mountains. They were tiny to the extreme, similar to the circular hall. This palace was also inconceivably clean. There wasn't a single speck of dust in any corner. The floor was paved with some kind of jade. It was a complete hole without a single crack. It was as smooth as a mirror, and one could clearly see the figures of the 6 people walking through it. If one looked down at their feet, they would feel an incomparably strange feeling. This was because at this moment it was like there was another self walking through a synchronized world. They passed through grand hall after grand hall. When Flowing Cloud stopped, they found themselves standing at the end of a long passage. An incomparably tall stone door blocked their way. "Everyone, we have arrived. Master is waiting behind the stone door." Flowing Cloud faintly smiled. He continued to say, "Although my master is willing to receive you all, the main goal of this trip is still Mr. Ning Qin. So I ask Mr. Ning Qin to go first. Once official business is concluded, my master will invite everyone in." Yun Dai's heart tightened. She clenched her teeth and said, "Wait a moment." She pointed at herself and frowned. "Can I go in?" Flowing Cloud's smile didn't change. "Miss Feng Qing, Master told me to ask you to wait here." He nodded, no longer speaking. He calmly looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu paused for a moment. He said, "If that's the case, I will go in first. You all wait here." Flowing Cloud nodded. "Thank you for your understanding, mister. I will open the door for you now." He took a step forward and pressed his palm against the stone door. Without any fluctuations of strength erupting, the stone door quietly opened a crack. It was pitch black inside. Perhaps because he didn't want them to worry, Flowing Cloud turned and explained, "You have already passed through the passage. The situation there is the same as behind the stone door." The darkness they saw now was only for the outside world. Qin Yu nodded. He took several steps forwards, about to step in without hesitation. "Teacher, be careful." Yun Dai couldn't help but cry out. Qin Yu didn't look back. He waved his hand and submerged into the darkness. Then, in the next moment, he knew that Flowing Cloud had lied. It looked dark outside, but it was even darker inside. This sort of pitch black wasn't a simple lack of light. Rather, it was a deep darkness, as if even the blazing sun couldn't disperse it. Luckily, this darkness couldn't obscure Qin Yu's eyes. After a brief flash, the world behind the stone door slowly appeared. A great dragon coiled in the skies above this desolate world. Its body was unimaginably large, surpassing 100,000 feet in length. Its entire body was covered in black scales, as if it had fused together with this world. As far as the eye could see, the ground and the distant nothingness were interwoven with giant cracks that couldn't be healed. It was clear that these cracks had been torn apart by the dragon's claws. When Qin Yu saw the great dragon, its eyes flashed open. They were crimson red, filled with a cruel and destructive aura. The great dragon's eyes locked onto Qin Yu, but they didn't seem to focus on him at all. Instead, they passed through his body and fell into the distance. Walala, the great dragon's body rose up. Its scales collided with each other, emitting the sound of metal crashing against metal. The sound was like rumbling thunder that struck straight into the soul. "I respectfully welcome your arrival, Master." It lowered its head, its voice constantly echoing through the air. Qin Yu's complexion changed. His eyes widened, revealing shock, anger, and disbelief. How did you know?" The great dragon coldly swept its eyes over him, as if it were looking down on an ant, without the least bit of emotion. Space trembled and fluctuated. A figure appeared. There seemed to be an invisible strength covering it, causing its face and body to blur. "You already knew that I would come?" The great dragon said in a low voice, "Yes, Master. I have been waiting for your arrival. I respectfully ask that you vanish forever." The ancient's voice was faint. "With just you?" Chapter 843. The ancient held his hands behind his back and looked around with disdain. "Then let them come out. They are just a bunch of small juniors. When have I ever feared them?" The myriad dragon body had a crazed expression and a respectful tone. Master's heroic spirit hasn't diminished in the past. This subordinate will not disappoint you. Then, are you still not prepared to show yourself? The great dragon turned its head, a faint smile on its face. After a brief silence, another great dragon appeared in the nothingness of this world. Surprisingly, its appearance was exactly the same as the myriad dragon body. The ancient frowned for a moment before he composed himself. He was as calm as ever, as if even if the world collapsed in front of him, he wouldn't be able to shake his mind. "Greetings, Master." The dragon's soul respectfully said, its giant head bowing deeply. "It really is you." The ancient said, "I was a bit surprised that you would betray me." The dragon's soul said, "I'm sorry, Master. I have failed to live up to your expectations. But this world is far too beautiful and life is far too brilliant. I have already developed a consciousness and I am not willing to fade away like this. So, even though I know that this is an extravagant hope, I still hope to obtain Master's forgiveness." The ancient looked at it. "Fighting for your life? The reason you have given me is ample, so I will give you this chance. But if you think you can complete the backlash with just the two of you, you are overestimating yourselves." His aura suddenly rose like an awakened great beast that could destroy the heavens and earth, sweeping out in all directions. "Since I can give you life, I can also destroy you." The myriad dragon body laughed. "Then let us wait and see. Will we be destroyed today, or will Master perish forever?" It shot into the skies, its body forming a semicircle as it opened its mouth towards the ancient. The dragon's soul looked up, its expression calm. "Today I fought for my life. Although I feel guilty and uneasy, I don't regret it all. Master, if you disappear today, I will offer sacrifices to you. On the contrary, if you can drive us away, I will be happy for you." Roar! With a resonant dragon cry, the dragon's soul shot into the skies, facing the myriad dragon body and forming another semicircle. From afar, this scene looked like two identical great dragons opening their mouths to swallow the ancient's consciousness. It was like two dragons fighting for a pearl. But this wasn't called two dragons fighting for a pearl, but 10,000 dragons devouring the soul. Rumble! A heaven-shaking roar filled this world, like the roar of thunder. Boundless fluctuations of energy erupted, and a strange black hole appeared, wrapping around the ancient's consciousness. In the next moment, the terrifying aura that filled the entire world, causing it to tremble and crack, suddenly vanished. All of this strength didn't disperse in the slightest. It was all gathered into the black hole. The chaotic strength within was like invisible fangs that wanted to pierce into the ancient's body and tear him to shreds. Within the black hole, the ancient didn't move. He still held his hands behind his back, his eyes sweeping around like a tiger. "Is this the strength? Perhaps I've been overestimating your strength all this time." The 10,000 dragon body roared, "Master, do you think we are too weak? Then take out all the gifts you've prepared." Bang! The space trembled and collapsed inwardly. A dazzling light erupted from within, as if a sun had suddenly descended and illuminated the entire world. Darkness instantly transformed into light. Even with Qin Yu's powerful eyes, he still felt a bit sour and tears overflowed from his eyes. He quickly closed his eyes, but before he could open them again, he could clearly feel terrifying auras appearing in this world, one after another. Each one was an absolute powerhouse. In terms of cultivation alone, they could suppress Qin Yu with a single hand. A dark golden light flashed in the depths of his eyes, and the discomfort in them rapidly faded away. He quickly opened his eyes and saw several figures fly out from the sun-like light. Without any hesitation, they threw themselves into the black hole that wrapped around the ancient's consciousness. They stood high in the air, their expressions solemn and respectful. They lifted their hands and slowly pressed down. Bang, bang. Their cultivations erupted to the point of insanity. Without hesitating to damage their foundations, they released their greatest strength and smashed it into the black hole. The ancient frowned, as if he could feel a bit of pressure. The 10,000 dragon body laughed. "Respected master, You have far too many enemies in this world. So many that, as long as we send out a message, countless people will be willing to pay any price to thoroughly destroy you. The dragon soul's voice was calm and steady. Master, please rest in peace. Bang! The black hole instantly turned chaotic. The darkness became even richer, like a great mouth that slowly swallowed up the ancient's consciousness. From start to finish, whether it was the 10,000 dragon body, the dragon soul, or the powerhouses that had just arrived, none of them looked at Chinyu. Perhaps in their eyes, Chinyu was only a negligible detail. Once the ancient's consciousness was killed, everything would come to an end. Thus, in this subconscious perception, Chinyu had fallen to the edge, becoming a bystander in this great war. Within the Grand Palace, at the end of a long passage, Yundai and Fengqing had nervous expressions. Their lips were tightly pressed together, revealing a pale complexion. As for Dorlice, she maintained her original appearance. She was like a curious baby, constantly looking at the stone door in front of her with interest. It seemed that if it weren't for Flowing Cloud standing beside her, she would have gone over and touched it. Suddenly, the silence outside the stone door was broken. Flowing Cloud turned to look at Dorlice, a warm smile on his face. In truth, I have a question on my way here. I hope Miss can dispel it for me. Dorlice turned her head. Flowing Cloud smiled and said, Miss Dorlice, may I ask, what sort of feeling does the divine soul realm feel like? I am very curious. Schwa. Space fell deathly silent. Yundai and Fengqing's breath caught in their throats. They felt as if their hearts had been grasped by an invisible hand. Fear swept over them like a tide, as if the pitch-black curtain of a winter night wanted to swallow them up. At this moment, Flowing Cloud was still smiling. Even his gentle expression hadn't changed in the slightest, but the feeling he gave off was different. It was impossible to describe what this feeling was, but it caused one to instinctively feel fear and despair, as if they were facing a bottomless abyss. Dorlice blinked her eyes. The divine soul realm. Cultivate hard, and once you reach a certain boundary, you will naturally know. Flowing Cloud shook his head. Because of certain reasons, my path of cultivation has been severed. Thus, it is impossible for me to reach the divine soul realm with my own strength in this life. He paused for a moment, his smile becoming even brighter. So, I hope that I can borrow Miss Dorelice's boundary. I hope that you can help me. Dorlice hesitated. Do you need to pay? Flowing Cloud looked at her with a bit of astonishment. If he hadn't personally confirmed the divine soul rules flowing within her body, he would have doubted her identity. This wasn't a reaction that a divine soul should have. As a result, after this brief silence, Dorlice revealed a look of contempt. If you don't pay, you probably didn't sleep well last night. You're still dreaming. Flowing Cloud looked deeply at her. Miss seems to be very confident. Of course, as a true divine soul, you have the qualifications to be confident. Then, let me experience the strength of a true divinity. He lifted a hand and grasped forwards. Dorlice flicked her sleeves. Yundai and Fengqing were wrapped up in an invisible strength and rapidly drew backwards. In the next moment, the space outside the stone door twisted. It was like a giant mouth had suddenly closed, swallowing Flowing Cloud and Dorlice. I didn't save you out of kindness. I was just afraid that Chinyu would come out and settle accounts with me. Now, run as far away as you can. Don't stay here and hold us back. Yundai and Fengqing glanced at each other. Without hesitation, they turned and ran. But at this time, Fengqing screamed out loud. Hum! A rich blue light emitted from her body. As this light erupted, she lost control of her body. She involuntarily flew backwards, passing through the space distortion where Flowing Cloud and Dorlice were fighting. From this moment on, it was like the two of them were no longer in the same world. Schwa, with a flash of light, Fengqing slammed into the stone door and disappeared. Yundai bit her lips. She quickly rushed outwards, vanishing from sight. The dark Parliament headquarters was located in an unknown land. It was a place that not even the senators had personally approached. At this time, deep underground, outside a great hall that was filled with endless darkness. Besides Chinyu, the other 7 senators were gathered here. Oriol's impatient voice sounded out. Is there still no signal? Just what is Senator Morningstar doing? Jasmine lightly said, Since there is no signal, that means that Senator Morningstar doesn't think it is the best time yet. Humph. The Dark Parliament has received news that almost all powerhouses have suddenly disappeared. Do you think this is related to what happened deep in the Upper Prime Mountain Range? Oriol coldly sneered. I am worried that someone will be tempted by greed and want to take everything for themselves. At that time, we will become a joke. Lone Mountain frowned, a gloomy look in his eyes. Out of everyone present, his need for the myriad dragon body was the strongest. His lifespan was nearing its end, so he couldn't take any risks. Even though he knew that Oriol's words were because of her grudge with Chinyu, he still felt anxious. Sage, let's make our move. Sage's voice was faint. If everyone is willing to make a move ahead of time, I have no objections. But I must remind everyone that there is only one chance to seize the myriad dragon body. If we fail, not only will none of us obtain anything, but the Dark Parliament will also establish a life and death enemy. At this time, a fluctuation appeared in the hearts of the senators. Let's go. Lone Mountain impatiently stepped into the great hall of darkness. His voice was low and excited. After today, Sky Declaring Pavilion will no longer exist in this world. Oriol glanced at Jasmine and coldly sneered. Even if he is Morningstar, he is no longer the one you know. For you to protect him so much, could it be that you are a love-struck fool? Jasmine was expressionless. The negative emotions in your heart have affected your judgment. After this matter is over, I will ask the Dark Parliament to pass a resolution and temporarily take back Senator Oriol's authority. Enough! With a great enemy in front of us, we must join forces against them. Sage swept his deep eyes over the two and stepped into the great hall. Humph! Oriol coldly snorted and was the third to enter the darkness. When all 7 senators entered, a deep humming sound echoed out. The darkness seemed to stir up waves, gently undulating in a rhythmic rhythm. Schwa. Chapter 844. Western Tomb. The endless divine palaces were shrouded in white, holy light. The atmosphere was dignified and solemn, causing one to instinctively feel awe. Within the main temple, beneath the blurry and indescribable statue of the Tao monarch, Ji Xiangtian sat on his throne. Beneath him, the saints' sons, cardinals, and great divine officials all stood quietly, each one with a dignified expression. As the Western Tomb that had a long inheritance and was considered a first-class power in the world, the number of channels it had spread through the darkness surpassed everyone's imagination. No one had been able to obtain accurate information about the abnormality that came from Sky Declaring Pavilion. But the Western Tomb was able to look deep into the Upper Prime mountain range. In addition to recent information from other sources, it could be determined that the Sky Declaring Pavilion master, who had been living in seclusion for many years, had finally decided to do something. This originally had nothing to do with the Western Tomb, but the origin of the Sky Declaring Pavilion master was a major problem. No one knew whether or not he would retaliate once he recovered, and the Western Tomb would be the first to bear the brunt. Your Excellency, there are old records of the past. The 10,000 dragon body rebelled against the ancient race and fled. As a result, he was killed by the Tao monarch. Even if he recovers his spiritual strength, there will be no conflict between us and the Western Tomb, a cardinal bishop slowly said. Everyone standing here today had the qualifications to touch upon ancient matters and knew many secrets that others didn't. Another cardinal said, even so, the myriad dragon body was refined by the ancient race in the end. Whether or not there are spells left behind is something neither of us know. The safest method is to make it disappear forever. Only then can the divine church be completely free of worries. For a time, the high-level figures of the Western tomb took these two opinions as their standpoints and began to argue. On the throne, Ji Xiangtian lightly coughed. His eyes swept around the hall, and all the noise quickly dissipated. He had controlled the Western tomb for thousands of years, and his dignity was deep and profound. In particular, after the matter with Qinyu, he paid even more attention to his own authority. After he dealt with several powerhouses of the divine church with thunderous methods, no one dared to provoke him anymore. The myriad dragon body was refined by the evil ancient race and should not exist in this world. It is fine if it has been silent these past years, but since it has tried to awaken and stir up trouble, I will not tolerate it. Send my order. Gather the West Hill Adjudication, West Hill Divine Guards, and West Hill Cold Knight, and follow me to the Shangyuan Mountains. As soon as he finished speaking, Ji Xiangtian suddenly frowned and revealed a trace of pain in his eyes. However, he suppressed it in the blink of an eye and said in a low voice, "All of you can leave." "Yes, Your Excellency, Divine Seat." Everyone in the hall bowed and left in a hurry, passing on the will of the Divine Seat. Rumble. The main hall's doors closed and all the windows were sealed. Ji Xiangtian's deep voice sounded, "I will pray to His Excellency, Tao Lord. No one is to disturb me." In the next moment, the main divine hall was completely sealed and all connections with the outside world were cut off. Under the statue of the Tao Lord, Ji Xiangtian suddenly raised his head and let out a painful roar. His mouth was wide open, and the 7 orifices of his head were emitting intense, holy light at the same time. It was like a ball of fire that engulfed his head. Blue veins bulged out from his neck, and his entire face was twisted. At this moment, Ji Xiangtian didn't have any of his previous majestic aura. Instead, he was like a struggling evil ghost that had escaped from hell. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger, placing it between his eyebrows. Not only did the holy light erupting from his nose not weaken, but it became even stronger. "Impossible!" Ji Xiangtian cried out involuntarily. "I clearly controlled this strength, so why did I lose control of it?" He turned around and looked up at the blurry statue of the Tao Lord. His eyes gradually widened as if he had seen something unbelievable. "That's right, you guessed correctly. The reason you can control this spiritual strength is because I gave you authority. But now I have taken back this authority. As the price, you must give me your body for me to use." Ji Xiangtian suddenly spoke, but the voice wasn't his. His cold and indifferent tone spread through the air, without the slightest fluctuation of emotion. "No." Ji Xiangtian roared in shock and anger. "You have already perished, I can sense it clearly. There is no way I am wrong about this." Then he spoke again. "The reason why you think I'm dead is because I let you feel the aura of my death. Perhaps it's hard for you to understand, but to me it's a very simple matter. When you confirmed that I was dead, you began to intercept my faith, and at the same time, you began to devour my cultivation of the great Tao. For thousands of years, you have done very well. You have perfectly concealed your own aura, and no one has discovered it. So, you are the perfect host that I have cultivated. If I can return, you will be credited with the greatest contribution. So, now you can fuse into my body and become a part of the holy light." Ji Xiangtian screamed, "No." But at this time, all the strength in his body had gone completely out of control. Raging holy light erupted from every pore on his body, burning fiercely and incinerating his physical body. In the end, only a ball of pure holy light was left. If one looked carefully, they would discover that within this holy light, there were countless runes condensing into chains that were constantly rotating. The long-lost feeling of freedom. A whisper came from the holy light. It was incomparably calm, but it also gave off a feeling of endless violence and madness. But this strength is not enough, far from enough. After countless years, I have finally waited for this day. I cannot allow any accidents to occur. The season of harvest has arrived. Bang! The sealed main divine temple suddenly exploded. Vast and majestic holy light erupted from within, like a torrent that swept out in all directions. The West Hill Divine Guards guarding outside the main divine temple had no time to react before they were wrapped up in the holy light. They were integrated into it and became a part of it. Without pause, the torrent of holy light continued outwards. Wherever it passed, the bodies of all the West Hill cultivators turned to dust. All their strength was absorbed and assimilated by it. A West Hill powerhouse saw that the situation was far from good. With a loud roar, he soared into the skies. His speed was fast enough, but as he flew through the air, his body rapidly disintegrated. Finally, all that was left over was a mass of holy light that held back. Moments later, the entire West Hill Divine Church had turned into a sea of holy light. Endless holy light fluctuated like waves. Like this, there was not a single cultivator left in the West Hill. Countless West Hill believers prostrated themselves on the ground. They looked up at the scene in front of them, their bodies shivering and their faces pale. As devout believers, they had personally witnessed the process of the West Hill being destroyed by the holy light. It was like divine punishment had descended from the heavens. As they were panic-stricken, a deep and deep voice echoed out from the sea of holy light. The West Hill lineage has been invaded by evil spirits. They have distorted the Tao monarch's great Tao and brought disaster to the world. Today, I will personally descend and erase them. In the future, a new orthodoxy will appear and spread the light of my great Tao. Rumble, rumble. The trillions of holy light rapidly shrank, finally condensing into a figure. The space around him twisted and seemed to be covered by the rules of the great Tao. It was blurry, but the aura he exuded was like 100 suns in the night sky, vast and mighty, sweeping away all. All the West Hill believers instantly felt faith and conversion from this figure. The fear in their hearts dissipated and their faces flushed red. Their eyes widened with fanaticism. Tao monarch, it's the Tao monarch. We greet the Tao monarch. In an instant, all the believers fell to their knees. At this moment, an invisible power of faith gathered onto the figure condensed from holy light. The Tao monarch looked up to the east. At this moment, his gaze pierced through the barriers of space and fell onto the depths of the upper prime mountain range. Gushin, victory and defeat have yet to be decided in our battle. Whether you will laugh in the end or whether my skills are superior, we will see the result today. He took a step forward, and the space beneath his feet collapsed. Then it began to collapse inwards, forming a huge black hole that then disappeared. In the next moment, deep within the upper prime mountain range, where fog filled the air, a black hole suddenly appeared. A violent strength erupted from within, like an erupting volcano. A terrifying strength swept out, dispersing all the fog within sight. Let's turn back time a little. It wasn't much, only several breaths of time. The 7 senators of the Dark Parliament stepped into the pitch-black hall and awakened the slumbering puppet once more. When it opened its blood-red eyes, it used its control of the power of darkness to directly descend into the depths of the upper prime mountain range, into the shadow of the great hall. But before the puppet could find the location of the 10,000 dragon body, it was surrounded by 13 figures that rushed up. Then, blood-red flames ignited on the surface of these 13 people's bodies. A great void array appeared and a powerful teleportation strength erupted. The puppet roared out loud, but before it could react, it was forcefully teleported away. Within the blood-red flames, the 13 figures were reduced to ashes. But when they closed their eyes, there was only tranquility and relief. They should have died a long time ago. It was only because they had received great kindness from their master that they were willing to be imprisoned in a state that was neither dead nor alive, suffering until today. Now that they had completed their mission, It was best for them to disappear. Thus, the Tao monarch, who had just arrived at the upper Prime mountain range, felt a powerful aura descend upon him as soon as he dispersed the surrounding fog. He frowned. Without hesitation, he lifted his hand and pressed down. Bang! Space fiercely twisted. It was like a piece of paper that had been forcefully clenched into a ball, wanting to crush the descender within. But after the distorted space violently trembled, it was like a fragile piece of ice on the water's surface. After a brief pause, it was torn apart, and the crimson-eyed puppet escaped. Their gazes instantly met. The Tao monarch frowned. He had never seen this puppet before, but when he faced it, he instinctively felt a deep loathing for it. At his level of cultivation, nothing in the outside world could shake his heart. There had to be another reason for this situation to occur. Before the Tao monarch could think further, the puppet roared out loud. Blood-red light flowed in its eyes, as if it had suddenly come to life. The complexions of the 7 senators that had fused into the puppet changed. They suddenly discovered that they had lost control of the puppet. And what was even more terrifying was that all of them had been imprisoned, and the puppet was crazily drawing out their strength. Tao monarch! The puppet roared and rushed forwards. It lifted a fist and punched out. Wherever its fist went, space instantly shattered and turned into a black dragon. Chapter 845. I am a Tao monarch. I am strong, and I am capable of enduring. But right now, I am completely bewildered. Who can tell me where this hideous puppet that's riddled with holes on its body came from? Why does it want to hit me? Although he was puzzled, the oncoming punch left the Tao monarch's heart cold. He didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. He lifted a hand and pressed forwards. Monstrous, holy light gushed out, like a mighty flood that gathered into a river that came crashing down with crushing momentum. No matter who you are, no matter why you are attacking me, you better lie down right now. The Tao monarch was enraged. He had waited so long for this day and had nearly obtained his best bargaining chip, his greatest chance to reverse the situation. How could it be destroyed by a mere puppet? But what the Tao monarch didn't know was that the emotions of the puppet in front of him were 10 times, no, 100 times stronger than his. How many years had passed? Endless years had passed, so long that the puppet's consciousness could no longer clearly recall the marks left behind by time. But even if 100,000 years passed, even 1,000,000 years passed, it still wouldn't forget this face. It was this person who had destroyed its own great Tao, causing it to be reduced to its current state. It had no choice but to rely on the body of a puppet to linger on its last breath. This hatred was so deep that even the waters of the blue sea couldn't wash it away. And most importantly, there was a trace of astonishment in the Tao monarch's eyes just now. It couldn't remember. Ha ha ha! This was an enemy that it had remembered for countless years, an enemy that was engraved in the hearts of the people, an enemy that it wished it could tear to shreds. Tao monarch! Tao monarch! This bastard has gone too far! Rumble, rumble! A wild impact erupted. The black Tyrannosaurus dragon formed from shattered space, collided with the great river of holy light. Both sides attacked without holding anything back. After a violent tremor, they both exploded. Thus, the shock waves that had slowed down for a moment suddenly rose up once more. Everything within its range was thoroughly destroyed. The Tao monarch revealed a gloomy expression. He never imagined that a puppet would possess such formidable strength that it was evenly matched with him. He took a deep breath and suppressed the tumbling, killing intent in his heart. He coldly said, "Who are you? Why do you want to be my enemy?" Damn it, the ancient was trying to take back the strength of the myriad dragon body. He couldn't allow this person to succeed, otherwise all of his plans would come to nothing. He didn't have time to waste here. Thus, after his seemingly imposing question, the Tao Lord suddenly took a step forward. The space beneath his feet rippled as he prepared to leave. But right at that moment, the puppet stomped down heavily, and the spatial fluctuations disappeared with a buzzing sound. The Tao Lord let out a low groan as his teleportation was interrupted. As expected, even after so many years, your sinister and cunning nature still hasn't changed. However, I've already been tricked once. I won't give you another chance. The puppet roared at the sky. Today, I'll bury you with me. It, or more accurately, his past self had died a long time ago. It was only because of his unwillingness that he had borrowed the body of a puppet to live until now. During the long years of slumber, he would occasionally wake up for a short period of time. In fact, he had regretted using the body of a puppet to drag out an ignoble existence. Instead of enduring this kind of torture, it would have been better to have died a glorious death back then. Now that it had met the Tao Lord, what else was there to say? Dragging him to the Yellow Springs with him was the best ending. The Tao Lord's teeth were aching. After all this time, it was an old enemy. He somewhat understood why the puppet was so angry. If it were him, he would probably do the same. But after living for so many years, he had killed countless people. Could he remember all of them? What's more, there was only a puppet left in front of him. It couldn't even be considered a person. In fact, at this moment, the Tao Lord wasn't the only one who was aching. There were existences even more uncomfortable than he was. For example, inside the body of the puppet, there were 7 members of the Dark Parliament who were originally the masters who controlled the puppet. Now, they had been imprisoned and turned into human-shaped batteries. To be honest, it was only today that they realized that the puppet, which the Dark Parliament had always viewed as their greatest trump card, actually possessed such terrifying power. But in reality, after the initial shock, they immediately regretted it. If they had a choice, they would rather never have found out about this. This was because the reason why the puppet had the strength to fight the Tao Lord head-on and not be at a disadvantage was because it relied on crazily draining their strength. This draining speed far exceeded the limits of what they could bear. The 7 senators seemed to be electrocuted. Their bodies shook like sieves, their mouths and eyes crooked, and drool dripped down. Every muscle in their body trembled as they cried out in pain. But did they have a solution? No. Not only that, but they couldn't change their current situation at all. As far as they could see, they could only maintain their current state. They had clearly seen an opportunity and sent out their strongest puppets, wanting to cooperate with Chinyu to seize the myriad dragon body and offer it to the dark altar. Then they could line up and wait for the fruits to be divided. But why had the plot just begun diverged so suddenly? And the difference wasn't just a little bit. It had turned into a nightmare. If it could be said that whether it was the Tao Lord or the puppet, both of them would definitely be drooling right now. They wouldn't even need to wash their faces. The Tao Lord sucked in a deep breath, his complexion completely calm. Since he couldn't get rid of this puppet, he could only destroy it. With his cultivation realm, he could naturally see that the reason the puppet was able to erupt with strength comparable to his own was because it was forcefully extracting strength from the outside world for its own use. But this state couldn't be maintained for too long. As long as he erupted with all his strength, he could cause the puppet to collapse in the shortest time possible. He had to be fast and end this battle as soon as possible. Bang! The Tao Lord's robes began to flutter without wind. Vast holy light gushed out, instantly sweeping through the world and flooding the world. Come! The puppet's eyes erupted with a blood-red light. With a loud shout, it advanced instead of retreating. Facing the blinding holy light, it rushed forwards. Ah! The 7 senators within the puppet all cried out in unison. None of them could escape their miserable screams. In fact, deep underground, there was another person who was also involuntarily screaming at the same rhythm as them. Chinyu felt as if a thick, invisible straw was ruthlessly stabbing into his chest. Then it forcefully sucked him dry, as if it wanted to suck him dry. And what was even more terrifying was that, in the space around him, faint traces of dark energy appeared, wrapping around him. Then, the space around him began to fluctuate. It was like a great mouth was slowly opening, wanting to swallow him up. What was going on here? He was far away and no one noticed him. So how could he suddenly be targeted? Moreover, it was so tyrannical and cruel. Then he discovered that the source of this terrifying swallowing strength came from the Dark Parliament. The connection between the senators crossed space and affected his body. Qin Yu's head hurt for a second. He had tricked them into coming here to mess up the situation and make it easier for him to take advantage of the situation. But now, before they even arrived, he was implicated? Speaking of which, just what sort of opponent did the Dark Parliament encounter? Even with their strength and in the puppet state, they were still in such a miserable state. Qin Yu suppressed these thoughts. He didn't care about what they encountered to begin with. A dark golden light flashed in his eyes. The black energy in the surrounding space instantly manifested into black rune chains. He lifted his hand and chopped down. Pa! Pa! There was a series of cracking noises in the void. The black rune chains broke apart one after another, and the drawing strength from Qin Yu's body immediately dissipated. As for the Dark Parliament, Qin Yu felt that they would definitely take good care of themselves. After all, they were all grown up. He looked up at the battlefield. The twin dragons and the several descending powerhouses were currently stimulating the power of the black hole to grind down the ancient's will. They hadn't discovered the changes occurring here. Qin Yu relaxed a little. Without leaving a trace, he continued to draw back some distance. The two dragons and the group of cultivators were attacking to their heart's content, their momentum like that of a tiger. But he could clearly see that they weren't able to touch the foundation of the ancient's will. It seemed that they weren't too far away from falling to their knees, so he didn't want to be affected. Chapter 846. I am the ancient. I have laid down a massive trap and waited for countless years. Today, I will draw in the net and make everything perfect. But who can tell me why the biggest fish that I have been waiting for after I spread out the net still hasn't arrived? Has he seen through my plan? That shouldn't be possible. But if it wasn't for this reason, then where did the crux of the problem lie? At this time, no one would have thought that the ancient that was imprisoned in the black hole and being beaten was actually having such thoughts in his mind. The dragon soul's betrayal was a bit unexpected, but in truth, it was still within the bounds of tolerance. Even if it joined forces with the myriad dragon body, and even brought in a group of powerhouses to help, in the eyes of the ancient, they were nothing more than chickens and dogs that couldn't withstand a single blow. The reason he had patiently endured was because he was waiting for the biggest fish to arrive. Only when he arrived could he make up for the last gap in his plan. Why hadn't he arrived yet? The ancient subconsciously frowned. As the masters outside the black hole saw this, their spirits were shaken. They thought that they had finally made him feel the pressure. But this was only the beginning. Brothers, all of you work harder. You're about to kill him. As if they had been injected with adrenaline, the masters all cried out, blood dripping from their ears as they desperately attacked. A trace of confusion flashed in the eyes of the two dragons. Could it be that they had overestimated their master's strength and couldn't withstand it anymore? And at this time, the ancient had been waiting for the biggest fish to arrive. He was now in an incomparably annoyed state. He attacked with everything he had, without holding anything back. The puppet across from him swayed back and forth, clearly unwilling to fall. He had already wasted a great deal of time here. As he thought about how the ancient could finish suppressing the myriad dragon body at any moment, a cruel and ruthless glint flashed in the depths of the Tao monarch's eyes. This card was originally prepared to be played when he faced the ancient, but now he couldn't care too much about it. He couldn't continue to be tied down here. With this thought in mind, the ancient took a deep breath. He lifted a hand and pointed between his eyebrows. A mote of light appeared in his eyes. This mote of light was dim at first, but it soon brightened. It was like a bright moon hanging high in the night sky, sprinkling down 1,000,000,000,000 rays of silver light. Eternal prosperity of the great Tao. A deep and low voice emerged from his mouth. Invisible law fluctuations swept out like a tide. Beneath the Shangyuan mountain range, in the mysterious void, a certain space within a group of floating majestic palaces suddenly exploded, revealing two figures. Flowing Cloud frowned. He stared at Dorlice across from him. He didn't know what problem had occurred with this powerful, divine spirit projection. Or could it be that this was all part of her scheme, and she had purposely revealed a flaw to lure him into the trap? As Flowing Cloud was afraid to move forwards, Dorlice's complexion rapidly paled. Her eyes widened as she looked at the void in front of her, as if she could pierce through space and see a figure. Impossible! This is impossible! She cried out involuntarily, and her eyes revealed struggle and fear. After that, her entire body was enveloped by an invisible force, and with a whoosh, she fled into the void and directly disappeared. Lu Yun's face darkened, and a cold glint appeared in his eyes. What did this scene mean to him? This was definitely going to cut them off. He had spent so much effort fighting for so long, constantly exhausting Dorlice's strength. What was this all for? Wasn't it to avoid excessive damage and obtain the complete divine spirit rules contained within this projection? The harvest season was just around the corner, and yet something like this had suddenly appeared. Moreover, this projection of Dorlice was related to whether or not he could be completely independent. Ha ha, ha ha. He absolutely couldn't tolerate this. Flowing Cloud stepped forwards, and his figure escaped into the void. He followed the aura of Dorlice and chased her all the way. No matter who it was, no one would be able to stop him today. He had arrived, he was just in front of him. Shwa! Flowing Cloud escaped from space. He immediately saw Dorlice rapidly shrinking until she finally turned into a bead. And within that bead, what flowed through it was the divine Tao rules that he yearned for even in his dreams. The Tao monarch looked at the chasing Flowing Cloud and frowned. He immediately reached out a hand and took the bead. Stop! Flowing Cloud wanted to shout out loud and then rush forwards to teach the Tao monarch a lesson. But as soon as this gaze fell on him, he knew that he couldn't win. He was just thinking that no matter who came today, it wouldn't be of any use. But now he felt so wrong that his lungs were about to explode. A wise man doesn't fight when the odds are against him. I will endure this. I must endure this. Then, not only will I endure this, but I will also have to quickly leave this place. Don't you see that this is a fight between big shots? If I continue to stay here and get sucked into this mess, I won't even have a place to cry. Lu Yun was decisive. He took a step back and was about to leave. But at this moment, a gaze fell on him from afar. Lu Yun shuddered and felt an inexplicable chill in his heart. He glanced at the puppet that had a tattered surface and was in a sorry state. He thought, "Why are you looking at me like that? Your opponent is over there. I'm just passing by. Go ahead and do what you need to do." Then tragedy struck him. The puppet roared. It suddenly opened its mouth and swallowed Flowing Cloud's figure. A terrifying suction force erupted, instantly locking down the surrounding space. Flowing Cloud was stunned for a moment. Then, all the hairs on his body stood on end. "What are you doing? I only showed myself once, and I'm about to leave. But you actually attacked me because of this? Are you *King crazy? You don't know that I'm being beaten up right now." But no matter what, he naturally wouldn't just sit and wait for death. He suddenly let out a dragon roar, and his humanoid body suddenly shattered. In the blink of an eye, he transformed into a huge dragon. If anyone had seen the scene of two dragons fighting for the pearl, they would have discovered that these three huge dragons looked exactly the same. After transforming into a dragon, the huge dragon swung its tail. Black cracks appeared in the surrounding space, and the sealed space trembled violently. But at this moment, the puppet roared again. Its devouring power instantly increased, and the huge dragon wailed as it was forcefully pulled into its mouth. The huge dragon's body was extremely huge. Given the puppet's size, even if it opened its mouth as wide as it could, it wouldn't be able to stuff in half of its scales. However, a strange scene appeared. The huge dragon didn't shrink, and the puppet didn't expand, but it really swallowed the huge dragon into its stomach. It was as if the absolute difference in size between the two sides had lost its absolute meaning due to the effects of the laws. No, no, I definitely won't be swallowed. The huge dragon roared in horror. More than half of its body had been swallowed, and the remaining part struggled frantically, trying to escape. The puppet stretched out its hand and pressed down on the dragon's head, forcing the dragon's entire body into its mouth. With a gulp, the astonishingly powerful huge dragon was swallowed whole, and the puppet's body didn't change at all compared to before. But from this moment on, the huge dragon's aura began to soar at an astonishing rate. It was as if the huge dragon that had been swallowed into its stomach had become its new source of power. At the sight of this, the Tao Lord almost cursed out loud. He had just played a card and was about to hammer this puppet to death, but a huge dragon had come out to deliver supplies to him. Was this F*King fake? Suddenly, the Tao Lord frowned. Something was wrong. Why did this huge dragon give him a familiar feeling? His eyes suddenly lit up, and a glint flashed across his eyes. The Tao Lord suddenly raised his head and looked at the puppet that had swallowed the huge dragon. He finally realized that there was something wrong with this dragon. If the Tao Lord wished he could tear this puppet apart before, then now he wished he could hug it and kiss it. Good, this was really good. Although he didn't know where this huge dragon came from, it was definitely a part of the myriad dragon body. Now that it had been swallowed by the puppet, the ancient's consciousness could forget about obtaining the complete myriad dragon body. Moreover, if the Tao Lord killed off this puppet and destroyed the huge dragon along with it, wouldn't that affect the ancient's consciousness and ruin its plans? The Tao Lord's eyes shined brighter and brighter. He suddenly felt as if he had grasped the key to the current situation. Tao Lord, even the heavens aren't standing on your side today. With the help of the dragon's soul, I will drag you down with me. The puppet roared and leapt forwards. The Tao Lord laughed. If I could destroy you once in the past, I can destroy you a second time. Today, I will make you vanish into thin air. Bang! Terrifying fluctuations of strength erupted from where both sides clashed. The entire Upper Prime mountain range trembled beneath the impact of this strength. At this time, the Shadow Clan group from the distant Dragon City finally arrived at the fog-shrouded area of the Upper Prime mountain range. It was unknown how this fog was formed, but it could even conceal the fluctuations of the battle between the Tao Lord and the puppet. Standing outside the shroud of fog, one couldn't feel anything at all. The Shadow Clan patriarch raised a hand and stopped the group. His eyes blazed as he swept through the fog. He found it hard to suppress the excitement in his heart, and his arms trembled beneath his sleeves. They'd arrived. This was the place where his master had informed him of the Shadow Clan's arrival. As long as they could enter and help his master resurrect, the Shadow Clan would welcome a brand new world. He took a deep breath and suppressed his surging emotions. He turned and bowed. Your Highness Saintess, we have arrived at our destination. I will open up a channel through the fog. Zhou Li's calm voice echoed out. Patriarch, please do as you wish. The Shadow Clan patriarch's hand flashed with light. He took out a jade talisman. A faint halo of light flowed over the surface of the jade talisman. He carefully poured strength into it and tossed it forwards. The jade talisman howled into the fog, causing the fog to retreat wherever it went. But this retreat didn't completely disappear. Wherever the jade talisman passed, it formed a channel that could be seen with the naked eye. Let's continue. The Shadow Clan patriarch waved his hand and the carriage continued forward. Surrounded by the Shadow Clan cultivators, it slowly entered the fog. Within the black hole, the ancient's consciousness was silently being hammered. He furrowed his eyebrows tighter and tighter. But this had nothing to do with the various masters outside who were on steroids. Rather, it was because he had determined that there must have been a problem somewhere in the plan. Otherwise, he would have arrived here already. So, what he needed to do now was to correct the problem. Then he couldn't continue to wait here. Chapter 847. Be careful! The dragon's soul roared. Every scale on the surface of the massive dragon body erupted with light. This light pierced into space like needles, holding it in place. The reaction of the myriad dragon body was a bit slower. With a roar, billowing blood-red light broke out from its body, but it would soon pay the price for its delay. And the most miserable were the masters closest to the black hole. They were all on stimulants. Just a moment ago, they had been excited, thinking that success was at hand. But in the blink of an eye, the situation had reversed. Bang! The black hole suddenly expanded, opening like a pitch-black maw. Before the excited powerhouses could respond, they were swallowed up. Ah! How could this be? Hurry and escape! With roars of alarm and anger, everyone's complexions changed. The ecstasy and excitement of imminent success had long since disappeared. But since the ancient had taken action, how could it give them a chance? Humph! With a cold sneer, the pitch-black black hole was like a deep sea of stagnant water. Suddenly, ripples spread out, instantly submerging everyone. In the next moment, all sounds, struggles, and fluctuations of strength vanished. All that was left was a deathly silence. All the powerhouses that had arrived from all directions. Those powerhouses that didn't hesitate to destroy themselves in order to kill the ancient's consciousness were instantly erased. Perhaps they were filled with unwillingness before they died, but this was the reality. From the moment they decided to come here, the result had already been decided. The disparity in strength between the two sides was far greater than they had imagined to completely drive away the ancient's consciousness. With just them, it was impossible. It was impossible in their entire lives. As the darkness swallowed up many powerhouses, it seemed to be replenished with even more strength. It continued to expand outwards. Roar, roar. The twin dragons roared, crazily resisting the swallowing strength of the black hole. Right now, their eyes were wide open, filled with shock and disbelief. The myriad dragon swallowing technique was their ultimate supernatural ability that could only be released when they joined forces. It represented the greatest strength on both sides, and it was originally used to thoroughly destroy the ancient's consciousness, but now it had been stripped away and turned into a method to deal with them. This was truly worthy of being the master that suppressed a world and ruled the world. At this time, the twin dragons couldn't suppress the fear in their hearts. But soon, they suppressed these emotions, and their eyes became even calmer than before. Before they attacked, no matter how confident they were, the fear and awe they felt towards the ancient's consciousness had been branded into their bones. Perhaps subconsciously, they all held a kind of belief that their master was powerful and invincible. That was why they were able to quickly regain their composure after a brief moment of fear. Since they had already made their move today, they had no other choice. The worst outcome would be death, but it was better than doing nothing. The ancient ruthlessly swept his eyes over the two dragons. He slowly said, "You two have some backbone and haven't completely lost face. I can grant you a dignified death." The dragon, Soul, lowered its head. "Thank you, Master. Your strength is indeed beyond our imagination, but I still do not regret fighting for my survival." It raised its head. "I will continue to fight. I will use all means to survive." The myriad dragon body roared. "Even if Master is extremely powerful, it won't be easy for him to devour and plunder our strength." The ancient had an indifferent expression. "Your strength? Don't forget that it was I who created you. Everything you have was given by me." He lifted a hand. "There is no need to argue. I do not wish to waste any more time. Let everything end here." The ancient lifted a hand. He stood in the middle of the black hole and grasped forwards. The swallowing strength released by the black hole suddenly rose by dozens of times. On the surface of the dragon soul and myriad dragon body, whether it was the light that stood in the void or the blood-red light that flooded their bodies, all of it began to violently shake. "Kacha! Kacha!" there was a series of cracking sounds. Large cracks appeared on the surface of the light and blood-red light. At the same time, the scales on the two dragons also began to break apart and fall off. Whoosh, whoosh, the falling scales were wrapped up by a formidable strength. They held into the black hole like meteors, directly disintegrating into pure strength. Red and pure white, they fused together and turned into a miniature dragon that flew into the ancient's body. The dragon's soul and myriad dragon bodies' complexions instantly became uglier. This was because their connection with this strength had been thoroughly severed, as if they had never possessed it. This proved that for hundreds of thousands of years, all their efforts to refine this strength for their own use and completely control it had failed. As long as they couldn't resist it, they would be swallowed up by the ancient without any chance of resisting. No, I will not dissipate like this. After hundreds of thousands of years of torment, if I still can avoid this calamity, then what meaning is there in suffering more pain? The myriad dragon body roared, and its eyes turned even redder. Faint traces of blood gushed out from between the broken scales, covering its entire body. Everywhere it looked was blood red. Bang! The myriad dragon body erupted with a blood-red light that wildly rose up. It no longer cared about anything else. If it couldn't resist, then it would be swallowed up and absorbed, so it might as well go all out. Even if it died, it would still die in a way it chose. This was because, from the moment it was born until now, all choices had been passively accepted. Whether it was the betrayal in the past, or the separation afterwards, or even hiding in this world, it had never truly left to look at the skies outside. Today, it would make a decision for itself. The ancient glanced over. The blood-red light around the myriad dragon body suddenly collapsed. Then, like a raging flood, it held back into its body. This sort of strength returning wasn't gentle at all. It caused severe impact damage to the myriad dragon body. Massive amounts of flesh and blood split apart, and the insides were torn into a mess. You don't even have the qualifications to destroy something that belongs to me. The myriad dragon body roared. It was no longer able to stabilize its body, and it flew towards the black hole. The dragon's soul reared back its head and roared, actually giving up all resistance. After hundreds of thousands of years, it took the initiative to fuse with the myriad dragon body. After being sucked into the black hole, once the myriad dragon body was destroyed, it would also be difficult for it to escape calamity. In order to survive, the dragon soul was willing to make any compromise, even fusing with the myriad dragon body. Even if it did this, it would be astonishingly difficult for them to separate again in the future. It might even be impossible to separate them again. But it was still alive. If one didn't approach it and experience death, they would never understand just how lucky it was to be alive. And just how horrifying was death, so horrifying that it left one terrified. To the dragon's soul, as long as it could live, nothing else was important. Roar, twin dragons as one. The myriad dragon body and dragon soul fused together. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, the ancient had slaughtered the entire dragon race and taken their mortal bodies and bloodlines to refine into a super dragon. Now, this super dragon was finally able to restore its original strength. And this strength wasn't as simple as 1 + 1. Rather, on top of the strength of both sides, it was multiplied to a terrifying degree. The ancient suddenly smiled. The wait has finally come. He lifted his hand and clenched his fingers into a fist. Roar! After fusing together, the super dragon emitted pained roars. It wildly struggled, its boundless strength tumbling about like a raging sea. But the imprisoning strength that descended from the void didn't waver at all. No. The voices of the myriad dragon body and dragon soul came out from the mouths of the dragons. They suddenly understood that the ancient had been waiting for them to fuse together on their own initiative. Once they were in their complete state, it would thoroughly swallow them. This was because only like this could it obtain the complete strength of the super dragon. The ancient reached out a hand and pulled. The super dragon was unable to resist and was pulled into a black hole. But at this time the ancient frowned. "It's not complete, but luckily the other part is here. Then, return to your main body." The ancient took a step forwards. He lifted a finger and placed it between the dragon's eyebrows. An invisible restraining strength used the super dragon as a medium and instantly rumbled into the surrounding world, shaking the laws of the world and creating massive fluctuations. These fluctuations instantly broke through the barriers of space and smashed into the majestic palace that floated deep underground. Then they continued outwards until they reached the fog-covered depths of the Upper Prime mountain range. The Tao monarch gradually gained the upper hand in its battle with the puppet. Even though it had swallowed up a dragon's soul, it was only barely able to remain undefeated. But the strength it borrowed from the outside world would eventually be exhausted, and now the powerful strength surging within the puppet's body had been consumed far too much. It was no longer able to erupt with powerful attacks to clash with the Tao monarch. A trace of regret and unwillingness flashed in the puppet's blood-red eyes. But in the blink of an eye, it disappeared, replaced by an absolute chill. In the end, it still couldn't do it, but until the final moment, it wouldn't give up. Moreover, the puppet still had one final card in its hand. By blowing up the puppet's body after losing its host, it would immediately dissipate from the world. But the puppet's self-destruction could release an extremely terrifying strength. It might even be able to kill the Tao monarch. Even if there was only a sliver of a chance, it was willing to try. An ominous light burst out from the puppet's blood-red eyes. The puppet's aura began to fluctuate. The Tao monarch's eyes brightened, and he subconsciously took a step back. He had finally been forced to the end. As long as he could defeat this puppet and then use it to destroy the dragon soul, it would definitely have a massive impact on the ancient's plans. Towards this, his intuition grew increasingly strong. But at this time, the space behind the puppet suddenly shattered. Its body sank into the shattered space and then vanished from sight. The Tao monarch's mind buzzed for a moment. Just what was going on? You clearly wanted to blow yourself up. So why did you run away like this? And most importantly, during his battle with the puppet, in order to prevent it from escaping, the Tao monarch had interfered with the surrounding world rules and sealed this entire space into an invisible prison. Just how did the puppet break through? The Tao monarch took a deep breath and suppressed the urge to curse out loud. Then he lifted a hand and tore forwards. Bang! Space directly shattered and a giant crack appeared. The Tao monarch stepped inside. Chapter 848. I am a puppet, and I have been tormented for so many years with regret. Finally, I have the chance to take revenge, but now someone is dragging me away. Running. Who the hell are you? Stop, hurry up and stop. If you do this again, I will fall out with you. I will fall out with you. Afterwards, I really did fall out with you, and I did it more than once. But it was useless, so now I am filled with pain and despair. Shwa, the power enveloping its body, suddenly dissipated, and the tremors in the space around it disappeared as well. The puppet gritted its teeth and turned its head around. It had decided that no matter what, it had to make the person behind it understand that dragging an unwilling person along was an extremely stupid thing to do. Then it saw a black hole that floated high in the air like a great black sun. Within this black hole, the ancient stood in the void. The two dragons in front of it roared in pain, but they were imprisoned and unable to move. The puppet felt a chill run down its spine. It was 10,000% sure that it didn't have the qualifications to teach the ancient how to be a human. If it really rushed up, it would be finished in minutes. But even if it didn't rush up, would the ancient let it go? If a big shot would waste energy to capture it for no reason, then it was clear they didn't come with good intentions. The puppet felt wronged. Had it been easy for it to endure for so many years? Just as it had a chance to take revenge, it had been forcefully ruined. Not just that, but it also had to face the disdainful eyes of that big shot. Perhaps it would soon be finished, and it would vanish into thin air. The ancient's gaze fell on the puppet. A trace of surprise flashed in its eyes. It looked up behind it, and its eyes brightened. In the next moment, space was torn apart by a tyrannical strength. The Tao monarch stepped out with a frosty expression and rising killing intent. The moment he left the space crack, he keenly sensed the aura of his fated nemesis. He looked up. Their gazes collided in midair. In that moment, even the air froze over. An invisible collision spread outwards, flooding the world. Pleasant surprise! This is truly a pleasant surprise. I originally thought that an uncontrollable mistake had occurred in this plan, but I never imagined that you would come. The ancient laughed, not at all feeling the unease of a loser facing a king. Tao monarch, after being separated for hundreds of thousands of years, we finally meet again. The Tao Lord frowned, and his eyes were heavy. You're not surprised at all. The ancient held his hands behind his back. Perhaps you've already guessed that I deliberately lost to you in the past in order to fake my death and avoid the great calamity of the world so that I could preserve a small chance of survival. But you actually don't know the overall situation of my plan. The Tao Lord was expressionless. I'd like to hear the details. Even though they had a bad premonition in their hearts, at their level of cultivation, victory or defeat was not always calculated. At the end of the day, the most important factor was still the strength one possessed. He had been patiently waiting for hundreds of thousands of years. The Tao Lord who descended today would, for a short period of time, be no weaker than a supreme Tao Lord. As for the ancient race, even though he had set all of this up, it was a fact that his physical body had been destroyed. How much strength did he have left? As long as they could stop him from devouring the super-colossal dragon, the outcome of this battle was still unknown. The ancient lifted a hand. For instance, this puppet in front of you. The Tao monarch believes that without my permission, how could it possibly hide in this world? The Tao Lord's pupils constricted. This was arranged by you? The puppet was stunned when it heard this. Its current fate was already pitiful enough. It definitely couldn't accept that this kind of life was just a part of someone else's plan. No, I am a spiritual god. After my mortal body was destroyed, my true soul didn't scatter, and I borrowed the body of this puppet to preserve my consciousness. All of this is my own will. It has nothing to do with you. The ancient glanced at the puppet, his voice faint. You should remember that before you found this puppet, your consciousness was blurry for a period of time. Then, do you know how much time has passed since then? The puppet's eyes widened. A chaotic light flashed in its blood-red pupils. It didn't want to believe all of this, but the reason a spiritual god was that they were one with the world and could sense everything around them. When the ancient revealed this matter, it was like the fog covering its head was instantly dispelled. A response was born. At first it was blurry, but soon it became clear. It was real, it was real. The spiritual god that had been hiding within the body of the puppet and withstood the torment of pain and suffering, bitterly persisting to this day, suddenly discovered that all of this was happening on a chessboard, and that it was nothing more than a chess piece in someone's hand. I will kill you, I will kill you. The puppet howled. At this time its hatred towards the ancient was no less than that of the Tao monarch. But to the ancient, he only explained all of this in order to strike at the Tao monarch's will. He didn't care about the puppet at all. Its anger, its resentment, its struggles, its roars, all of this was meaningless. Pa, pa, pa. The Tao monarch clapped his hands, his eyes filled with emotion. Your Excellency, the ancient, is truly unfathomable. To have fallen for your schemes in the past, I am thoroughly convinced. He looked up. His robes fluttered and his aura rose. But even so, you might not be able to have the last laugh. The ancient looked up. No, it is you who doesn't understand. When you arrived here, the final gap in my plan was filled. And the result was already decided many years ago. The Tao monarch laughed. Good. Then let me experience just where your confidence comes from. Bang! Endless holy light erupted. A towering holy mountain appeared with countless spiritual gods and holy spirits prostrating on it. The Tao monarch stepped forwards, directly stepping onto the peak of the holy mountain. He turned, and a vast curtain of light appeared, covering him within. Solemn, dignified, boundless momentum. Great Tao eternal prosperity. The Tao monarch's deep voice was like thunder. It touched upon the world's rules and swept through the world. A massive divine throne appeared behind the Tao monarch. He took a step back and sat down. In the next moment, monstrous flames erupted. With the divine throne as the center, they instantly covered the entire holy mountain. Burning the great Tao was the ultimate eruption method of a supreme being of this level. By damaging their great Tao as the price, they could obtain an incomparably formidable strength. The ancient had a calm expression. He lifted a hand and pointed out a finger. Sacrifice. At this moment, Qinyu, who had retreated extremely far away, felt his heart shrink. He didn't know what the ancient wanted to do, but his intuition told him that something very bad was about to happen. The boundless South Sea stretched as far as the eye could see. Trillions of islands dotted the land, as numerous as the stars in the sky. Even now, no one had ever found them all. The giant spirit clan that was being chased by the various influences led by the Western Tomb was hiding in the South Sea on an ordinary island. The environment here was harsh, and there were great restrictions on what they could eat, and there were also dangerous sea beast attacks. But living on this island meant that they didn't need to worry about exposing their identities. When they first arrived here, Shueya and Shue Qingqing weren't used to this. They had lived a life of luxury since they were young. Before the upheaval in their family, they had never suffered any hardship. However, they were well aware of their current situation. To have a safe place for them to settle down was already the best result they could hope for. They didn't dare to ask for anything more. But slowly, they discovered that although the island was a bit bitter, the people of the giant spirit clan were simple and kind. In particular, after Big Brother Qinyu released them, the entire clan began to exude joy from within. They believed that after hundreds of thousands of years of hiding and evading pursuit, their destiny would soon come to an end. A brand new future would soon open up for them. Living here, they didn't feel any pressure at all. They felt an unprecedented sense of relaxation. The women on the island tidied up the courtyards, hung out the nets, and looked after the children. At the start, they didn't know anything, but they gradually integrated into the work. As they chatted and laughed, they would help them with some tasks. Today was a very ordinary day on the island. The Shue family sisters and a group of women were repairing and cleaning the nets. On the village road outside the fence, a group of cute and lively giant spirit clan children were constantly chasing each other and laughing. Without any warning, a catastrophe arrived. Standing across from Shue, the giant spirit clan woman had been smiling just a moment ago, but in the next second her head exploded and blood wildly gushed out from the terrifying wound on her neck. And this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of a terrifying scene. In a single breath of time, the women in the courtyard had all turned into headless corpses. Bang, bang, bang. Deep thumping sounds echoed through the village. The Shue family sisters' faces were covered in blood. They stared at the scene in front of them, their bodies trembling in fear. Woo-woo! A strong wind blew up, and the entire village fell into a deathly silence. There was no longer any sound. The air was thick with the scent of blood, and everything was crimson. Big, big sister! Shue Qingqing's teeth chattered. Shue Hea covered her mouth. Don't speak. In the next moment, the blood that stained their bodies seemed to be attracted by an invisible force. One by one, beads of blood flew into the air. Then, on the ground, even the women's corpses that continued to bleed, all of the beads of blood gathered above their heads like a downpour. A huge face, made entirely of blood, gradually appeared. Its tightly closed eyes trembled, as if it would open at any moment to take a look at the world. Shua, the blood face, opened its eyes. At this time, countless wails and screams filled the air. There were men and women, old and young, all of them wove together and pierced into the depths of the soul. A cold chill rose up in the air, drilling into the heart, lungs, and marrow. The Shwe family sisters' minds buzzed, and all the blood drained from their faces. Their legs buckled, and they fell to the ground. And what terrified them even more was that many of these voices were familiar to them. They belonged to the people of the giant spirit clan that had been killed. The blood face swept over them. Its eyes were like a sea of blood. It coldly swept its eyes over the island, as if it were determining whether or not there were any fish that had escaped its net. After several breaths of time, the blood face looked up. The skies above directly collapsed and shattered, as if it couldn't even withstand a single glance from it. Whoosh! The blood face flashed and submerged into the skies. At this time, the Shwe family sisters finally managed to regain consciousness. All of the terrifying aura had vanished, and the smell of blood in the air had also vanished. But the dried corpses that had all of their blood drained from their bodies were a cold reminder of everything that had just occurred. Chapter 849. By burning the great Tao in exchange for the ultimate strength of the Tao monarch, the power of the great Tao eternal prosperity supernatural ability had touched upon the level of destroying the heavens and earth. It was enough to completely erase everything. He lifted a hand and pressed forwards. With the divine throne as the core, the entire burning, holy mountain violently trembled and boundless strength surged outwards. At this time, space trembled. Giant cracks appeared, spreading outwards like a spider web. It was like a great net was unfurled as it fell towards the ancient. Facing the Tao monarch's all-out attack, the ancient had a calm expression. He didn't erupt with strength to resist. Instead, he held his hands behind his back and looked up at the shaking heavens. In the next moment, the shaking heavens seemed to be struck. With a loud bang, countless fragments spun out in all directions. The giant blood-red face stepped forwards. It faced the falling net and let out a deep roar. This roar was formed from countless voices, men and women, young and old. It was filled with pain and despair, as if all the negative emotions in the world had been fused together. The Tao monarch's great Tao eternal prosperity strike that burned his great Tao actually collapsed and dissipated beneath this roar. The towering holy mountain that was wrapped in flames violently shook. Divine spirits and sacred spirits screamed in pain as their bodies shattered and dissipated. Atop the divine throne, the Tao monarch's eyes darkened. He looked at the blood-red face that had descended beside the ancient's will and sighed with emotion. The ancient's methods are quite fierce. He actually predicted today's situation many years ago and left behind such a contingency plan. But the world's great Tao revolves around the samsara of yin and yang. All things in existence have their own path of balance. With such cruel methods, aren't you afraid that the heavenly Tao will hate you out of jealousy? The ancients said, I used my own bloodline to create them, granting them an inheritance of hundreds of thousands of years. Today, I am only taking back what I have done. There is nothing wrong with me. If even so the heavenly Tao will hate me out of jealousy, then let it hate me. What can it do to me? With an aura that disdained the heavens, the ancient revealed his ruthless and ambitious attitude. He stood between the heavens and earth like a pillar that held up the heavens. The world fell silent. Even someone as powerful as the Tao monarch was like a puppet of hatred. His mind seemed to be seized. In this silence, Qinyu, who stood at the far edge of space, didn't stand out at all. He was like a small stone on the edge of a vast river. But no one knew that countless emotions were roiling and surging within the chest of this stone. Once it exploded, it was sufficient to cause rivers to flow and the sun and moon to dim in comparison. When Qin Yu first saw the blood-red face that broke through the heavens, he was able to determine its identity and origin through their mutual senses. Giant Spirit Clan. This was a race that carried a heavy mission and had been used mercilessly from the beginning to the end. In the end, it was destroyed in the hands of their creator. Perhaps this could be viewed as a samsara cycle, but Chinyu couldn't do this because he had personally come into contact with them before. The giant spirit race were not emotionless puppets or tools. They were living beings with their own feelings and will. When he borrowed the name of the ancient race to release them, he hoped that the giant spirit lineage could escape their own tragic fate, but in the end, he still wasn't able to save them. Even though Chinyu didn't see the process of the blood-red face condensing with his own eyes, he was sure that all the giant spirits in this world had vanished into thin air. The figure of the girl named Hong Xiao appeared in his mind. She should be dead by now, although he had only come into contact with the giant spirit clan several times and couldn't be said to be close to them. Chinyu still felt incomparably angry at this moment. Slaughter in itself wasn't evil. Ever since he stepped onto the great Tao of cultivation, his hands had long since been stained with blood. Although he couldn't guarantee that there weren't any ghosts left in his hands, everyone he killed had a reason. The ancients' actions today might have seemed reasonable to him, but they had touched upon Chinyu's bottom line. However, even as his anger burned, Chinyu still chose to suppress it after his bottom line was touched. He sympathized with the giant spirit clan, but he wouldn't ruin his own plans for them and jump into the range of the ancient race ahead of time. After all, everyone had their own considerations and scruples. Bang! Billowing black clouds erupted from the puppet's body. Like a massive amount of ink had been poured into clear water, it rapidly spread out. Everyone's field of vision turned pitch black, as if eternal darkness had descended and covered everything. The puppet's aura within the darkness rapidly vanished, as if it had fused into the darkness. The puppet that had been gnashing its teeth in hatred a moment ago, wishing that it could perish together with the ancient race, had actually chosen to flee after seeing the situation. That's right, the puppet was currently fleeing. Over the endless years, the divine will trapped within the puppet's body had indeed regretted its actions more than once. But it didn't want to be destroyed. It didn't want to be swallowed up and assimilated by others. This sort of meaningless and tragic ending was something it couldn't accept. Thus it had to flee. As long as it could avoid this moment, there would inevitably be a great battle between the Tao monarch and the ancient race, and it would be able to hide in the darkness and find a chance. If it could reap the benefits, then not only would it not die, but there would also be unimaginable harvests. For instance, the myriad dragon body, a powerful dragon soul, a Tao monarch's great Tao, an ancient's body. As long as there was a trace of light in life, no living being would be willing to embrace death. This was an unchanging truth since time immemorial. But what a pity the ancient race wouldn't let it leave. This was because a part of the dragon soul was locked within the puppet's body, and the integrity of the dragon soul was an important part of the ancient race's plan. They couldn't allow even the smallest flaw to exist. Many years ago, I once broke into the endless black abyss. After several decades of war, I personally cut off the head of a dark overlord. As the ancient spoke, his body began to move. He lifted a hand towards the deep darkness, clenched his fist, and then slammed it down. So, there is no meaning in playing around with the strength of the dark domain in front of me. The Tao monarch suddenly attacked. A dazzling holy light rose up in front of the darkness, forming a torrent. Do everything you can and flee as far as you can. Not too long ago, he had been scheming to destroy the puppet, but now he had no choice but to help it escape from the ancient race's attack. It wasn't too much to say that fate toyed with people, but this was reality. There were no eternal enemies. There was only the passage of time, constantly sizing up the situation. Powerful existences were especially skilled at this. The ancient sneered, "Tao monarch, you have overestimated your own strength. Do you really think you can stop me?" The torrent of holy light violently shook and then shattered. Like a giant dragon that had been cut in half, it tumbled about and rapidly dissipated. The darkness was blasted apart and tumbling fluctuations rapidly spread outwards. Although it was still pitch black inside and no one could see what was happening, The pained cries of the puppet were enough to make one feel just how terrifying the ancient's fist was. The tumbling darkness rapidly dispersed, and the puppet reappeared. Its chest was deeply sunken in, and countless cracks spread out from it, covering every inch of the puppet. These cracks were like shackles that imprisoned the puppet in place, making it impossible for it to move in the slightest. The ancient looked up at the Tao monarch. "Now, after I deal with you, all obstacles will vanish." The Tao monarch suddenly took a step back. Where his foot landed, space trembled and fluctuated. But he knew that he couldn't escape, so his actions weren't to escape, but to open up a channel for some people to reach here. Space trembled, and a group of cultivators flew out. Their gazes instantly fell on the super dragon that was suppressed in the black hole. "My master!" The Shadow Clan patriarch cried out in alarm. His eyes turned crimson red. He could clearly feel the terrifying aura of the ancient. His body instinctively shivered in fear, but emotion surged out from deep within his heart, overwhelming all reason. He roared out loud, "Shadow Clan bloodline, the day has arrived to sacrifice yourselves for my master. Kill!" All the Shadow Clan members in the group followed behind him, rushing forwards like moths to a flame. The ancient flicked his sleeves, and space shook. The Shadow Clan members that rushed forwards were erased like reflections in water. They vanished without a trace, not even leaving behind a speck of dust. He frowned and looked at the Tao monarch. "Is there any meaning in wasting strength to open up a channel for this bunch of trash?" The Tao monarch lightly said, "I was already in a hopeless situation to begin with. As long as there is even the slightest possibility, I should try." His eyes brightened. "Now that the people have arrived, where is the turning point you spoke of?" At this time his eyes fell onto the giant dragon that was being suppressed. What responded to the Tao monarch was a resonant dragon roar. The silent carriage was shattered by a sudden eruption of strength. Zhou Li's face was pale and her eyes were filled with fear. She was wrapped up in an invisible strength as she flew out. A dragon phantom appeared between her eyebrows, constantly dancing around her as it roared at the ancient. Dragon soul. Zhou Li's body had actually fused with the last remnant of the dragon soul. The Tao monarch frowned. He could already sense that the ancient had an intense need for a complete dragon soul. Then, why did the giant dragon take the initiative to bring this woman here? Was it repentant and hoping to use this method to obtain the ancient's forgiveness? Impossible, they shouldn't be so stupid. Or was there another reason? The Tao monarch didn't hurry to express his position. His eyes locked onto the ancient. As expected, the ancient frowned. But this female cultivator's cultivation wasn't worth mentioning, and she didn't have any formidable aura. It was clear that her background was ordinary. How could she possibly cause the ancient to feel any fear? The giant dragon spoke, its voice billowing out. "Master, you need to completely swallow us in order to complete your mission. So, I brought this woman here for Master to deal with. But there is something I must inform Master ahead of time. This woman's soul is connected to the dragon's soul. Once she is separated, she will immediately wither away. In other words, when you swallow us, you will also kill her." The ancient's eyebrows relaxed. He said without expression, "Do you think I care about the life or death of a woman?" The giant dragon said, "Of course Master doesn't care, but there will always be others who don't wish for her to die." It turned its head with difficulty, its dragon eyes locking onto the distant Chinyu. It slowly said, "I believe you have no objections to this point.